Rain hammered Brooklyn like nails, driven into a coffin, the night Rafferty Vale realized the woman he once loved was dying on the sidewalk, and the only reason she was there was because of him. 4 years ago, he chose power over saving his brother. Now his brother's widow was selling her wedding ring for $40 in the freezing rain, and the most dangerous crime boss in South Brooklyn was about to make the worst decision of his life, bringing her home. If you want to know whether love can survive between two people destroyed by the same tragedy, stay until the end. Hit like and comment what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. The rain came down hard enough to drown memories, but Rafferty Vale's past refused to stay buried. He sat in the back of a black armored SUV parked across from a grimy bodega on Foster Avenue, watching his driver count cash for a protection payment. The neighborhood looked like it always did: broken streetlights, graffiti-tagged shutters, people hurrying past with their heads down. Nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing worth his attention. Then he saw her. At first, he didn't recognize the woman sitting on a piece of flattened cardboard outside the bodega. She wore a coat too thin for November, her hair hanging in wet tangles around a face he couldn't quite see. Just another homeless person trying to survive another brutal night in Brooklyn. The city was full of them. But something made him look twice: the way she held herself. Shoulders pulled inward like she was trying to disappear but refusing to collapse completely. One hand extended toward passing strangers, the other clutching something small and golden. Rafferty leaned forward. His driver, Marcus, glanced back through the partition. "Boss, we done here?" "Wait." The woman turned her head slightly, and the streetlight caught her profile. Everything inside Rafferty went cold. Serafina. 4 years. 4 years since he'd last seen her standing in a cemetery wearing black, her face blank with shock. 4 years since she'd looked at him across his brother's grave and said nothing, because what was there left to say? And now she sat on a sidewalk in the rain trying to sell something to a kid who barely looked 16. Rafferty was out of the SUV before Marcus could kill the engine. He crossed the street through traffic that didn't dare honk at him, rain soaking through his suit jacket within seconds. Up close, the truth was worse than he'd imagined. Serafina's face was hollow. Not just thin, hollow. The kind of starvation that carved shadows under cheekbones and made eyes look too large. Her hand shook as she held up the ring. $40, she was saying to the kid. "It's real gold. I just need $40. The kid looked uncomfortable. "I don't got $40, lady." "30 then. 20. Her voice cracked. "Please." Rafferty stopped 3 feet away. Serafina's gaze shifted to him slowly, like she was moving through water. For a moment there was no recognition. Then her eyes focused. The hatred that flooded her face was so pure it could have cut glass. "No," she whispered. Rafferty stood frozen as the kid mumbled something and hurried away. The bodega owner watched from behind dirty glass, calculating whether to call the cops. A taxi splashed through a puddle nearby, spraying water that neither of them noticed. "Serafina, don't!" She struggled to her feet, cardboard sticking to her legs. "Don't you dare say my name!" "What happened?" She laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was broken in ways that made Rafferty's chest tighten. "What happened?" She swayed slightly. "What happened? You want the whole story or just the highlights?" "I didn't know that." "That's the problem, Rafferty." Her voice dropped to something deadly quiet. "You never looked. You buried your brother and went back to your empire and never once thought about what happened to the people he left behind." Rafferty's throat felt like someone had their hands around it. "I thought you were okay. Your family." "My family disowned me when I married him." Serafina's smile was terrible. "They said he was a criminal. They said I was making a mistake. Guess they were right." Rain dripped from her hair onto her shoulders. She looked like she might collapse at any second. "The life insurance policy?" Rafferty heard himself ask. "The money I sent—" "There was no policy, and I sent your blood money back." She held up the ring, gold glinting wetly. "This is all I have left, and I can't even get $40 for it." Something cracked open inside Rafferty's chest. He'd built an empire on violence and fear. He'd made decisions that cost lives, destroyed families, burned entire operations to ash. He'd convinced himself those decisions were necessary. Strategic, the price of power. But standing on a rainy Brooklyn sidewalk looking at his brother's widow trying to sell her wedding ring, Rafferty Vale finally understood what his choices actually cost. "Come with me," he said. Serafina stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "Excuse me?" "My house, there's room, food, I need you to walk away." Her voice shook. "I need you to get back in your car and forget you saw me." "I can't do that." "Why not?" She stepped closer, rage burning through exhaustion. "You forgot about me for 4 years. What's a few more?" "Serafina, he talked about you constantly." The words came out raw. "Every day, every single day. My brother this, my brother that. He worshipped you, and you let him die." Rafferty took it. He deserved every word. "I know," he said quietly. "You don't know shit." Serafina's hands were shaking badly now. "You weren't there when the hospital called. You weren't there when I had to identify his body. You weren't there when I couldn't afford the funeral you didn't bother attending. You weren't—" Her voice broke completely. "You weren't there." Rafferty stood in the rain, watching the only woman who'd ever looked at him without fear fall apart. "You're right," he said. "I wasn't, and I can't fix that. But I can keep you from freezing to death tonight. I don't want your help. I know. I hate you. I know that too." Serafina looked at him for a long moment. Behind them, Marcus had pulled the SUV closer, idling at the curb. The bodega owner had given up watching. The street was empty except for the rain. "One night," Rafferty said. "Get warm, eat something, then you can leave and I'll never bother you again." "Why?" The question came out broken. "Why do you care now?" Rafferty had spent 4 years lying to himself about why he'd stayed away. Telling himself she was fine. Telling himself she'd moved on. Telling himself his guilt didn't matter because she was safe somewhere living the life his brother would have wanted for her. The truth was simpler and worse. He'd stayed away because looking at her meant facing what he'd done. "Because I should have checked," he said. "I should have made sure. And I didn't. And that's on me." Serafina's laugh was bitter. "That's it? Guilt?" "Yes." Something about his honesty seemed to drain the fight out of her. She looked down at the ring in her palm, then at the cardboard on the ground, then at nothing. "One night," she whispered. "One night." She moved toward the SUV like a woman walking toward her own execution. Marcus opened the door without comment. Rafferty followed her into the vehicle, maintaining careful distance. The drive to Bay Ridge was silent. Serafina sat pressed against the far door, staring out the window at neighborhoods flowing past. Rafferty watched her reflection in the glass. She looked like a ghost. Maybe that's what she was. A ghost of the woman his brother had married. A ghost of the life Rafferty had destroyed. When they pulled up to the mansion, Serafina didn't react. No shock at the size. No comment on the iron gates or the security cameras or the men stationed outside. She just climbed out and stood in the rain, waiting. "This way," Rafferty said. Inside, the house was exactly what it looked like from the outside. A fortress. Marble floors, dark wood, locked doors, silence heavy enough to suffocate. Evelyn appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. The housekeeper took one look at Serafina, and her expression shifted into something fiercely protective. "Get towels," Rafferty told her. "And food. Something warm." Evelyn nodded and disappeared. Serafina stood dripping in the entryway, clutching her ring like a talisman. She looked around slowly, taking in the expensive emptiness. "He would have hated this place," she said quietly. Rafferty felt the words like a knife. "I know. He wanted a small apartment, Brooklyn Heights maybe. Big windows, exposed brick, somewhere he could hear the city. He told me." Serafina turned to face him. "Did you listen?" The question hung between them. Evelyn returned with an armful of towels and a compassion in her eyes that made Rafferty's chest ache. She wrapped one around Serafina's shoulders without speaking, then guided her toward the kitchen. Rafferty stood alone in the entryway, rain dripping from his suit onto marble floors worth more than most people made in a year. He'd built this place on blood and fear. Every brick paid for with violence, every room insulated with silence. The house was a monument to power, and proof that power couldn't keep anything warm. In the kitchen, Evelyn was setting soup in front of Serafina and speaking in low, gentle tones. Rafferty watched from the doorway. Serafina's hands shook so badly she could barely hold the spoon. "When did you last eat?" Evelyn asked softly. "I don't remember." Evelyn's mouth tightened. She ladled more soup, added bread, poured tea. Serafina ate slowly at first, then faster, like her body couldn't help itself. Rafferty turned away. His study was at the end of the hall, dark wood and darker secrets. He poured himself whiskey he didn't want and stood at the window looking out at nothing. 4 years. 4 years of telling himself he'd made the right choice, the only choice. Refusing to negotiate with the Russian syndicate that took his brother wasn't just strategy, it was survival. Give them what they wanted and the entire empire would have collapsed. Every crew, every operation, everything he'd built would have burned. So he'd chosen the empire. And his brother died because of it. Rafferty had attended the funeral in his head 1,000 times. In reality, he'd been in Boston handling the aftermath, making sure the Russians understood what happened when they touched his family, making sure no one ever tried it again. He'd sent money. He'd made arrangements. He'd handled it. But he hadn't looked at her, hadn't checked, hadn't cared enough to make sure the woman his brother loved was actually okay. The whiskey tasted like ash. Footsteps behind him. Evelyn appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "She's in the guest room," the housekeeper said. "Second floor, east wing." "Good." "That girl is starving, Rafferty." "I know." "She's got bruises on her arms, old ones. Someone hurt her." Rafferty's hands tightened on the glass. "Who?" "She wouldn't say, but she flinched when I moved too fast." Evelyn's voice was hard. "Whatever you're planning, don't make it worse." "I'm not planning anything." "Bullshit." She stepped into the room. "I've worked for you for 15 years. I know when you're calculating something." Rafferty met her eyes. "She stays as long as she wants. She eats. She's safe. That's it." "And then what?" "And then she leaves." Evelyn studied him for a long moment. "You know who she is." It wasn't a question. "Yes." "And you're really going to let her walk away?" Rafferty looked out the window at rain hammering the empty garden. "I don't have a choice." Evelyn left without responding. Rafferty stayed in the study until dawn broke gray over Brooklyn. Then he went upstairs to check on Serafina, not to talk to her, just to make sure she was still there. The guest room door was closed. He stood outside it for 5 minutes, listening to silence, before walking away. Toots. The first 3 days were brutal. Serafina left her room only for meals, and even then she barely spoke. She ate like someone expecting the food to disappear. She watched Rafferty like he might attack at any moment, and every time their eyes met, the hatred in hers was clear and absolute. Rafferty gave her space. He worked from his study, handled business remotely, made sure Marcus and the other men understood that Serafina was off limits. No questions, no comments, no looking at her the wrong way. On the 4th day, he found her in the library. The room hadn't been used in years. Books lined the walls floor to ceiling, most of them his mother's. Rafferty stopped in the doorway, watching Serafina run her fingers along the spines. She pulled down a worn copy of Chekhov and opened it carefully. "Your brother loved Chekhov," she said without turning around. Rafferty's throat tightened. "I know. He used to read me The Lady with the Dog when he couldn't sleep." She flipped pages. "He'd do all the voices. Made it funny. Made me laugh even when the story was sad." "That sounds like him." Serafina turned to face him. She looked less skeletal now. 4 days of regular meals had put some color back in her face, but the shadows under her eyes remained. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked. "I told you." "No, the real reason." She held the book against her chest. "You could have given me money, put me in a hotel, set me up with a job somewhere. Why bring me into your house?" Rafferty had asked himself the same question for 4 days straight. "Because I owed him," he said finally. "And I owe you." "You can't pay that debt." "I know." Serafina's expression shifted into something complicated. "Do you even feel guilty? Or is this just you playing the hero because it makes you feel better?" The question was designed to hurt. It worked. "I don't sleep," Rafferty said quietly. "Haven't slept through the night in 4 years. Every time I close my eyes, I see him the way he looked when they found him. So no, I'm not playing the hero. I'm just trying to do one thing right." Serafina studied him for a long moment. Then she turned back to the bookshelf, dismissing him. Rafferty left her there. But that night, he heard music drifting from her room. Ella Fitzgerald, soft and aching through the walls. He stood outside her door listening until the song ended, then forced himself to walk away. A week became 2. Serafina started leaving her room more often. She wandered the house like a ghost, learning the layout of its haunting. She discovered the neglected garden behind the brownstone and spent hours outside pulling weeds from around dead rose bushes. Evelyn watched her with fierce approval. "That garden was your mother's," she told Rafferty one morning. "She'd be glad someone's caring for it again." Rafferty said nothing. He watched Serafina from the study window. She worked carefully, methodically, bringing small pieces of life back to the overgrown space. Her hands were gentle with the damaged plants. Patient. At night, the rituals began. Rafferty worked late. Always had. But now when he came to the kitchen at midnight looking for coffee, he found a fresh pot waiting, and Serafina sitting at the table with a book. The first time, neither of them spoke. The second time, she pushed a cup toward him without looking up. The third time, she asked, "Do you always work this late?" "Yes." "Why?" "If I stop moving, I think too much." Serafina glanced up from her book. "What do you think about?" "Things I can't change." She went back to reading, but something in the air had shifted. After that, the midnight kitchen became their space. No one else was awake. No one watching. No history crushing down on them. Just 2 people drinking coffee in the dark. Serafina talked about her grandmother who'd survived poverty in Boston by growing vegetables in window boxes, about the literature classes she'd taught before everything fell apart, about the bookstore where she'd worked before she couldn't afford rent anymore. Rafferty listened. He didn't talk about himself, didn't offer his own stories, just listened and poured more coffee when her cup ran empty. "You're different than I expected," Serafina said one night. "How so?" "Your brother talked about you like you were a god. Untouchable. Perfect." She stirred sugar into her coffee. "But you're just a man who doesn't sleep. Is that disappointment I hear?" "No." She looked at him directly. "It's worse. It's understanding." The words hung between them like a confession. Rafferty knew he should leave, should maintain distance, should remember that this woman hated him for good reasons, and getting close would only make everything harder. But he stayed, and Serafina didn't ask him to go. 3 weeks in, the first crack appeared in Serafina's armor. Rafferty came home to find Evelyn in the kitchen, face tight with concern. "What happened?" "She's in the garden," Evelyn said, "crying. Won't tell me why." Rafferty found Serafina sitting among the rose bushes, dirt on her hands and tears streaming down her face. She didn't look up when he approached. "Talk to me," he said quietly. "I can't do this." "Can't do what?" "This." She gestured vaguely at the house, the garden, him. "I can't keep pretending I'm just here temporarily. I can't keep pretending I don't know what you are. I can't." Her voice broke. "I can't keep hating you as much as I'm supposed to." Rafferty's chest tightened. "Serafina. He loved you so much." The words came out raw. Every story, every memory, it was always about his amazing older brother who built something from nothing, who protected the family, who was going to change everything. She looked up at him with devastated eyes. "How am I supposed to hate the person he loved most in the world?" Rafferty crouched down beside her, careful not to touch. "You hate me because I failed him. That's fair. But you're also the reason I'm alive right now." Serafina's hands shook. "If you hadn't found me that night, I'd be dead." "I was so close, Rafferty. So fucking close. And you pulled me back." "So what am I supposed to do with that?" The question had no good answer. "You survive," Rafferty said. "That's all. You survive and you figure out what comes next and you don't worry about what you're supposed to feel." "Is that what you do?" "No." He met her eyes. "I destroy things. It's all I know how to do." Serafina studied his face for a long moment. Then she did something that broke him completely. She reached out and touched the scar on his jaw, the one he'd gotten in the same fight that killed his brother. "This is from that night," she said quietly. "Yes." "Did it hurt?" "Not as much as what came after." Her fingers lingered on his skin. "I want to hate you. I know. But I can't anymore. That's worse, Rafferty said. Serafina's hand dropped. I know. They sat in the garden until sunset painted the sky red, neither of them speaking, both of them understanding that something irreversible had just happened. Chat. Winter deepened into the kind of cold that made Brooklyn feel abandoned. Serafina's roses survived under careful protection. She spent hours winterizing the garden, building small structures to shield the fragile new growth. Rafferty watched her work with an intensity that should have scared him. The midnight conversations grew longer. They talked about books, about music, about the version of Brooklyn that existed before either of them was broken. Serafina asked questions about his mother, the woman whose garden she'd brought back to life. Rafferty told her stories he hadn't thought about in years. The way his mother used to sing in Italian while cooking, the way she'd made him promise to always protect his brother, the way she'd died disappointed in the man he'd become. She wouldn't be disappointed, Serafina said one night. You didn't know her. I know you, and I know that whoever you were when she died isn't who you are now. Rafferty wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that people could change, that choices could be unmade, that the blood on his hands could somehow be washed clean, but he knew better. I'm exactly who I've always been, he said. I just hide it better now. Serafina looked at him across the kitchen table, lamplight making shadows of them both. You really believe that? Yes. Then why did you save me? The question stopped him cold. Because he couldn't find words. Because you're not just the sum of your worst choices, Serafina finished for him. No one is. Rafferty stood abruptly. I should let you sleep. But as he turned to leave, Serafina spoke again. He wrote you letters. Did you know that? Rafferty froze. After we got married, she continued quietly, he wrote you letters about his life, about me, about how happy he was. He mailed them to your office. Did you ever read them? The truth was a knife. No, Rafferty admitted. I threw them away. Why? Because I was building an empire, and he was building a life, and I didn't want to see the difference. Serafina's expression cracked open. Do you regret it? Every day. She stood slowly, crossing the kitchen until they were only a foot apart, close enough that Rafferty could smell her shampoo, something clean and simple that didn't belong in his world. I found them, she whispered. What? The letters, after he died. In a box with my things. He'd kept copies. Her eyes shimmered. Every single one. And I read them over and over, trying to understand how someone could love a brother who didn't love them back. I did love him. Not enough. The words weren't angry, just true. You loved your empire more. Rafferty stood motionless as the truth settled between them. I know, he said, finally. Serafina reached up and touched his face again, the same scar, the same gentleness that destroyed him. He forgave you, she whispered. In every letter, every single one. He made excuses for why you didn't write back, why you didn't visit, why you didn't care. He forgave you over and over and over. Serafina, but I won't. Her hand dropped. I can't hate you anymore, but I won't forgive you either, because if I do, then his death meant nothing, and I can't let it mean nothing. She walked away, leaving Rafferty alone in the kitchen with the weight of every choice he'd ever made crushing down on him. He stood there until dawn, staring at nothing, understanding for the first time that there were some debts that could never be paid. Mamke. The snowstorm hit on a Thursday. Forecast called for 8 inches. Brooklyn got 18. The city ground to a halt, streets unplowed, subways delayed, everything buried under white. Inside the mansion, the heat worked fine, but the power flickered twice before Evelyn started lighting candles. Marcus and the other men were trapped at a safe house across town. Communication was spotty, and for the first time in years, Rafferty Vale was completely alone with the one person he shouldn't be. Serafina stood at the library window watching snow bury the garden. She'd been quiet all day, distant in a way that felt dangerous. We should eat something, Rafferty said from the doorway. I'm not hungry. Serafina, where's your study? The question caught him off guard. Why? I want to see it. There's nothing to see. She turned to face him, and the look in her eyes made his chest tighten. Show me. Rafferty knew he should refuse. should maintain the boundaries that were already too blurred, should remember that letting her into the room where he kept his secrets would only make everything worse. But he showed her anyway. The study looked like exactly what it was, a war room. Maps of territories on the walls, files stacked on every surface. A desk cluttered with documents marked with names of people who'd crossed him and disappeared. Serafina walked the perimeter slowly, taking it all in. She stopped at the map of Brooklyn covered in colored pins. "What are the red ones?" she asked. "Operations." "And the black?" "Casualties." There were more black pins than red. Serafina traced one with her finger. "Did you kill all of these people?" "No." "But you ordered it." "Some of them." She moved to the desk, running her hand over the files. "Does it ever bother you, knowing how many lives you've destroyed?" "Yes." "Then why do you keep doing it?" The question had too many answers. Because it was all he knew. Because stopping meant collapse. Because the empire his mother wanted him to build had consumed him completely. But Rafferty was tired of lying. "Because I'm good at it," he said quietly, "and I don't know how to be good at anything else." Serafina opened one of the desk drawers absently. "That's the saddest thing I've ever—" She stopped. Rafferty's stomach dropped. In her hand was a worn leather journal. "Don't," he said. But she was already reading. The journal had been his brother's. The one Rafferty found at the scene. The one filled with handwritten notes and memories, and a final entry dated the day before he died. Serafina read that entry in complete silence. Then she looked at Rafferty with an expression that made his blood freeze. "You knew," she whispered. "Serafina, you knew they might kill him. It's right here. He wrote about the negotiations, about you refusing their demands, about how scared he was." Her hand shook. "And you still refused." Rafferty had spent 4 years preparing for this moment. "Yes," he said. The word dropped like a bomb. Serafina stared at him, the journal trembling in her grip. "Why?" "Because if I gave them what they wanted, the empire would have collapsed. Every operation, every crew, everything I'd built. They'd have owned me. So you chose power." "Yes." "Over your brother." "Yes." The confession shattered something between them. Serafina dropped the journal like it burned her. "Get out." "This is my house." "Get out!" Her scream was raw enough to strip paint. "Get out! Get out! Get out!" Rafferty left. He went to the kitchen, poured whiskey he didn't taste, and listened to Serafina destroy his study. Glass breaking, furniture overturning, 4 years of grief finally finding its voice. When the sound stopped, he found her sitting on the floor surrounded by wreckage, crying so hard she couldn't breathe. Rafferty stood in the doorway watching the woman his brother loved fall apart because of choices Rafferty had made. "I loved him," he said quietly. Serafina looked up, face devastated. "Not enough." "No," Rafferty agreed. "Not enough." And for the first time in his life, he told the complete truth. "I loved power more. I loved control more. I loved the empire more." His voice broke. And by the time I realized what I'd lost, it was too late. He was already dead, and you were already gone, and I couldn't take back any of it. Serafina sobbed openly now. "He worshipped you. I know. He would have died for you." "He did." The words hung in the air like smoke. Outside, snow continued falling, burying Brooklyn under white. Inside, 2 people destroyed by the same tragedy sat in the wreckage of Rafferty's secrets, finally facing the truth neither of them could escape. "I can't forgive you," Serafina whispered. "I know. I don't even know if I can look at you anymore." "I know that too." She closed her eyes. "Then why do I keep staying?" The question had only one answer. "Because you don't want to be alone," Rafferty said. "And neither do I." Serafina looked at him across the destroyed study, and something in her expression shifted. Not forgiveness, not absolution, just recognition. They were both ruins, different kinds, different causes, but ruins all the same. "Tell me the rest," she said finally. "Everything, every choice, every reason, all of it." So Rafferty did. He told her about the night his brother was taken, about the demands, about the impossible choice between surrender and survival. about finding the body 3 days later in a warehouse in Red Hook, about the blood on the walls and the way his brother's hand still clutched a photo of Serafina. He told her about the aftermath, about hunting down every person responsible, about watching them beg before killing them anyway, about pouring 4 years of guilt into violence that solved nothing. And he told her the worst truth. "I'd make the same choice again," he said quietly. "If I had to. If the situation was identical, I'd choose the Empire, because that's who I am. That's all I know how to be." Serafina absorbed this in silence. Then she stood, walked to where Rafferty sat, and did something he never expected. She put her hand on his shoulder. "I believe you," she said, and somehow that was worse than her hatred. They cleaned the study together in silence, righted furniture, swept glass, restored order to chaos. When it was done, Serafina made scrambled eggs in the kitchen while Rafferty found a jar of sauce that was only slightly expired. They ate at the table without speaking, the storm raging outside. The truth settled between them like a third presence. After dinner, Serafina stood. "I'm leaving tomorrow." Rafferty's chest went tight. "The storm? When it's over then, but I'm leaving." "Where will you go?" "I don't know yet." She looked at him directly. "But I can't stay here. Not anymore. Not knowing what I know." Rafferty nodded slowly. "I understand." "Do you?" "Yes." Because he did. Finally, completely. Loving someone meant letting them go, even when it destroyed you, even when you wanted to use every ounce of power you possessed to make them stay. Even when losing them meant losing the only good thing left in your ruined life. Serafina turned to leave, then stopped. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for saving me that night, for feeding me, for letting me hate you, for telling me the truth." "Serafina, but I meant what I said. I can't forgive you, and I can't keep pretending I might." She met his eyes one final time. "Your brother loved you, and you broke his heart, and mine. And I need to survive that somewhere that isn't here." She walked away. Rafferty sat in the kitchen listening to her footsteps fade upstairs, understanding that when morning came and the snow melted and the city dug itself out from burial, she would walk out of his house and his life forever. And he would let her, because that was the only choice he had left. But in the darkness of the storm, with truth finally spoken and lies finally burned away, Rafferty Vale allowed himself to wonder what might have been different if he'd chosen love over power just once. Just one time. 4 years ago. When it might have mattered, the storm broke before dawn. Rafferty woke to silence, the kind that follows violence when the world holds its breath waiting to see what survives. He hadn't slept, just lay in his bed staring at the ceiling, counting the hours until Serafina walked out of his life forever. 5 hours. Maybe 6 if the streets were still bad. He got up, showered, dressed in the dark. Downstairs, the house felt emptier than usual. No coffee brewing, no music from Serafina's room. Just the hollow echo of his footsteps on marble. In the kitchen, he started coffee himself. His hands were steady. They were always steady. Years of violence had taught him how to keep his body under control even when his mind was tearing itself apart. The sun rose gray over Brooklyn. Rafferty stood at the window watching the city dig itself out. Plows scraped through streets, early risers shoveled sidewalks. Life returning to normal like the storm had never happened. Behind him, footsteps. Serafina appeared in the doorway wearing the same clothes she'd arrived in, the too thin coat, the worn jeans. Her bag sat at her feet, everything she owned in the world fitting in something the size of a backpack. "Coffee?" Rafferty asked. No. She didn't sit, just stood there holding herself like she might fall apart if she let go. "The roads are clear," he said. "Marcus can drive you anywhere you want. I'll walk." "Serafina, I need to walk." Her voice was flat, empty. "I need to leave here the same way I came, on my own." Rafferty understood. Taking his help now, even a car ride would feel like surrender, like accepting that she needed him, and she couldn't afford to need the man who'd destroyed her life. "Where will you go?" he asked. "Does it matter?" "Yes." She looked at him for a long moment. "There's a shelter in Sunset Park. I stayed there before. They'll take me back until I find work." The words hit like a punch. A shelter. She was going back to a shelter rather than stay in a mansion with heat and food and safety, because safety meant nothing if it came from the person who'd taken everything else away. I can help you find an apartment, Rafferty said carefully. Pay first and last month. Security deposit. You wouldn't owe me anything. No. A job, then. I know people. Restaurant owners. Shop managers. People who owe me favors. I said no. Serafina's voice went hard. I don't want your money. I don't want your connections. I don't want anything that ties me to you ever again. Then what the fuck did you want? The question came out rougher than Rafferty intended. You want to hate me? Fine. Hate me. But don't throw your life away just to prove a point. That's what you think this is? Serafina stepped closer, anger finally breaking through the numbness. A point? I'm trying to survive you, Rafferty. I'm trying to rebuild something that doesn't have your fingerprints all over it. And I can't do that if I'm living in your house, eating your food, sleeping under your roof. You think the shelter is better? Yes. The word was absolute. Because at least there I'm just another person who fell through the cracks, not the widow you're keeping around to ease your guilt. The truth of it knocked the air from Rafferty's lungs. Serafina picked up her bag. Thank you for not letting me freeze to death. But that's where this ends. She walked toward the door. Rafferty's entire body screamed at him to stop her, to use the voice that made grown men confess their sins, to offer whatever it took to make her stay. But he stood frozen. Because Serafina was right. This wasn't about what he wanted. It was about giving her the only thing he could, the freedom to choose her own destruction over his protection. Serafina, he said quietly. She stopped, but didn't turn around. If you need anything, ever, you know where I am. Her shoulders tightened. Goodbye, Rafferty. The door closed behind her with a sound like a coffin lid. Rafferty stood in the empty kitchen as morning light crept across marble floors, understanding for the first time what it felt like to lose something that mattered more than power. 3 days passed like open wounds. Rafferty tried to work. Meetings with crew bosses. Territory disputes that needed handling. Money that needed moving. The empire grinding forward like it always did, indifferent to the fact that its king could barely focus. Marcus noticed first. You good, boss? He asked after Rafferty missed the same question twice during a collection review. Fine. You don't look fine. Rafferty's glare could have stripped paint. I said I'm fine. Marcus backed off. Smart man. But Evelyn had no such restraint. She found Rafferty in his study late on the third night, staring at nothing with a glass of whiskey that hadn't been touched in an hour. You're brooding, she said from the doorway. I'm working. You're staring at a wall. She crossed her arms. Where is she? Gone. Obviously. Where did she go? A shelter in Sunset Park. Evelyn's expression went dangerous. You let her go to a shelter? I let her go where she wanted to go. That girl was starving when you found her, bruised, broken, and you just let her walk back into that? Rafferty's hands tightened on the glass. She made her choice. She made the choice someone makes when they're scared. Evelyn stepped into the room. When they think accepting help means giving up, you should have stopped her. She didn't want to be stopped. Since when do you care what people want? The housekeeper's voice went sharp. You run an empire built on making people do things they don't want. You enforce protection payments. You collect debts. You make problems disappear. But suddenly, when it's someone who actually needs your help, you develop a conscience? This is different. Why? Because you feel guilty? Evelyn's laugh was bitter. Guilt is what you feel after you do something, Rafferty, not an excuse for doing nothing. What do you want me to do? He stood abruptly. Chase her down, force her to come back, lock her in a room and make her accept my help? I want you to fight for her the way you fight for everything else. She doesn't want me to fight for her. She wants me gone. Then maybe you should ask yourself why. Evelyn's gaze went hard. Maybe you should ask yourself what kind of man builds an empire on loyalty, but can't figure out how to earn it from one broken woman. She left before Rafferty could respond. He stood alone in the study, Evelyn's words cutting deeper than any knife. The truth was, he didn't know how to fight for Serafina. Violence he understood. Intimidation, strategy, control. But caring about someone without owning them? Helping someone who hated him? Earning trust instead of demanding it? Those were languages Rafferty Vale had never learned to speak. On the fifth day, Marcus appeared in Rafferty's study, looking uncomfortable. "We got a problem." Rafferty looked up from paperwork that wasn't getting read. "What kind?" "The kind involving your house guest." Every muscle in Rafferty's body went tight. "She's not my house guest anymore." "What happened?" Marcus shifted his weight. "Got a call from Jimmy Bones. He runs collections in Sunset Park. Says there's a woman at the shelter causing problems." "What kind of problems?" "The kind where she punched a resident who tried to grab her in the bathroom. Broke his nose. Shelter director wants to kick her out, but she's got nowhere else to go." Rafferty was on his feet before Marcus finished talking. "Where?" "Boss." "Where, Marcus?" 43rd and 7th. "But you should know, Jimmy says the guy she hit is connected. Mikey Torres runs with that crew out of Borough Park." Rafferty's blood went cold. "The Vega crew?" "Yeah, the Vega crew didn't forget insults, especially not from women who should know better than to fight back." Rafferty grabbed his coat. "Get the car." Marcus followed him to the SUV without arguing. The drive to Sunset Park took 15 minutes that felt like hours. Rafferty's mind ran through scenarios, each worse than the last. If Mikey Torres wanted revenge, he'd take it, and Serafina wouldn't see it coming until it was too late. The shelter sat on a corner between a laundromat and a bodega with bars on the windows. Gray building. Graffiti-tagged doors. The kind of place people went when they'd run out of options. Rafferty was inside before Marcus killed the engine. The lobby smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation. A tired woman sat behind plexiglass looking like she'd seen every kind of human tragedy and stopped caring years ago. "I'm looking for Serafina Mercer," Rafferty said. The woman barely glanced up. "No visitors." "I'm not a visitor. I'm family." "Sure you are." She went back to her paperwork. "Come back during visiting hours." Rafferty pulled $500 from his wallet and slid it through the gap in the plexiglass. The woman's hand covered the bills. "3rd floor, room 307. You got 10 minutes. He took the stairs 2 at a time. The 3rd floor hallway was narrow and dim, lined with doors that all looked the same. Rafferty found 307 and knocked twice. "Go away." Serafina's voice came through the wood. "It's me." Silence. Then footsteps. The door opened a crack. Serafina looked worse than she had 5 days ago. A bruise darkened her cheekbone. Her knuckles were split and swollen. But her eyes burned with something fierce and unbroken. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Heard you had trouble." "I handled it." "By breaking a connected guy's nose?" Her jaw tightened. "He touched me. I made sure he wouldn't touch anyone else." "Do you know who he runs with?" "I don't care." "You should." Rafferty stepped closer, lowering his voice. "The Vega crew doesn't let things go. They'll come for you. Then I'll handle that too." "Serafina." "I told you I didn't want your help." But her voice shook slightly. "I meant it." Rafferty studied the bruise on her face. "Who hit you?" "Mikey." "Before I hit him back." Violence rose in Rafferty's chest like a tide. The kind that had built his empire. The kind that solved problems permanently. "Where is he now?" "The hospital, probably." Serafina's expression went hard. "And before you go all crime boss on me, I don't need you to fix this. I don't need you to make it go away. I just need you to leave me alone." "Can't do that." "Why not?" "Because in about 6 hours, Mikey's crew is going to come looking for payback. And when they find you, breaking your nose will be the least of what they do." Fear flickered across Serafina's face. Just for a second. Then she buried it. "That's not your problem." "Like hell it isn't. I'm not your responsibility, Rafferty. I'm not your brother's widow you have to protect. I'm not some project you get to fix to feel better about yourself. I'm just a person trying to survive, and I'd rather take my chances with Mikey's crew than owe you one more fucking thing." The words landed like bullets. Rafferty understood then. Really understood. This wasn't about pride or stubbornness. This was about survival. Serafina had spent 4 years being crushed under the weight of circumstances beyond her control. And the only power she had left was the power to choose her own path, even if that path led straight off a cliff. Okay, he said quietly. Serafina blinked. Okay? You want to handle it yourself, handle it yourself. But I'm making one call. Just one. To make sure Mikey's crew knows you're off limits. After that, I'm gone. You'll never see me again. Why would you do that? Rafferty met her eyes. Because I failed your husband. And I failed you. But I won't fail you twice. Something cracked in Serafina's expression. One call? One call. And then you're gone? Completely. She studied him for a long moment, calculating whether to trust him. Finally, she stepped back. Fine. Make your call. Rafferty pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in months. Carlos Vega answered on the second ring. Vale, been a while. I need a favor. I don't owe you favors. You owe me 3. Remember that thing in Red Hook? And the warehouse fire? And, yeah, what do you want? One of your boys, Mikey Torres, had an incident with someone under my protection. I need it forgotten. Silence on the other end. Then Carlos laughed. Mikey said some crazy bitch broke his nose at a shelter. That's one of yours? She is now. What's she to you? None of your business. Come on, Vale, you don't make calls like this for randoms. She must be special. Rafferty's grip on the phone tightened. She's off limits. That's all you need to know. Off limits, Carlos repeated. Like permanently off limits? Or just don't touch her this week off limits? Permanently. Another pause. This is going to cost you. Name it. That territory dispute in Bensonhurst. You back off, we forget this ever happened. Rafferty had been fighting for that territory for 6 months. It was worth close to $1 million a year in revenue. Giving it up would be a significant loss. He didn't hesitate. Done. Seriously? Carlos sounded surprised. That was too easy. She must be really special. Do we have a deal or not? Yeah, we got a deal. Mikey won't touch her. None of my guys will. But Vale? You're getting soft. That's dangerous in our business. The line went dead. Rafferty pocketed his phone and looked at Serafina. You're clear. Vega crew won't bother you. She stood in the doorway of her tiny shelter room, arms wrapped around herself. What did it cost you? Doesn't matter. Rafferty? It doesn't matter, he repeated. You're safe. That's all that counts. Why? The question came out broken. Why do you keep doing this? Why can't you just let me go? The truth sat in Rafferty's throat like broken glass. Because she was the only good thing in his ruined life. Because watching her survive felt like redemption he didn't deserve. Because somewhere in the past month, the widow he'd been trying to save had become the person he couldn't imagine losing. But he didn't say any of that. Because someone should have done it 4 years ago, he said instead, and I'm the only one left who can. Serafina's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. I can't keep accepting your help. I know. Every time you fix something for me, it makes it harder to hate you. I know that too. She wiped at her eyes roughly. You should go. Rafferty nodded. But before he turned to leave, he pulled an envelope from his coat pocket and set it on the small table by her door. What's that? Serafina asked. Information about jobs, apartments, places that won't ask questions about your history. He met her eyes. None of it's connected to me. None of it puts you in debt. Just options if you want them. Rafferty, I'm done now, he said quietly. You won't see me again. But if you need anything, Evelyn's number is in there too. He walked away before she could respond. Down the stairs. Through the lobby. Into the SUV where Marcus waited without asking questions. As they pulled away from the curb, Rafferty looked back once. Serafina stood in the third-floor window, envelope in her hands, watching him leave. And Rafferty Vale, who'd built an empire on never showing weakness, let himself hope that maybe, somehow, she'd use what he'd given her to build something better than survival. 2 weeks crawled by. Rafferty threw himself into work. Territory expansions, new contracts, old problems that needed burying, anything to avoid thinking about the woman living in a shelter who'd punched a connected guy and refused to take help from the only person offering it. Marcus reported back periodically. She's still at the shelter, got a job interview at a bookstore in Park Slope. Good. She didn't use any of the contacts you gave her. Doesn't surprise me. Boss, you know you could just... No. Marcus went quiet. Smart man. But Evelyn had no such restraint. You're being an idiot, she announced one morning while Rafferty ate breakfast he couldn't taste. Good morning to you too. That girl is living in a place with roaches and violence, and you're sitting here pushing eggs around your plate like a sad widower. She doesn't want my help. She doesn't want to need your help. There's a difference. Evelyn poured herself coffee without asking. You know what her problem is? She thinks accepting anything from you means she's weak, means she's giving up, means she's betraying her dead husband. She's probably right. She's absolutely wrong. The housekeeper sat across from him. That girl's husband loved you, worshipped you. If he could see her now, starving and alone and too proud to accept help from the one person who actually cares, he'd be furious. Rafferty's hands stilled. You didn't know him. I know you, and I know guilt when I see it. Evelyn's voice softened. You can't bring him back, Rafferty. You can't undo what happened, but you can make sure his widow doesn't destroy herself trying to prove she doesn't need you. How? She won't take my money, won't use my connections, won't even talk to me. Then stop offering help. Evelyn met his eyes. And start offering her. What does that mean? It means stop treating her like a problem to solve. Stop throwing money and influence at her like that's all you have to give. Start treating her like a person you actually give a damn about. Rafferty sat back. And how exactly do I do that? You show up, Evelyn said simply. You don't call first. You don't ask permission. You just show up and be present and let her see that you're not going anywhere, no matter how hard she pushes. That's stalking. That's persistence. The housekeeper stood. And it's the difference between a man who gives up when things get hard and a man who fights for what matters. She left Rafferty alone with cold eggs and the uncomfortable realization that Evelyn was right. He'd been treating Serafina like a debt to pay, a problem to fix, a way to ease guilt. But she wasn't any of those things. She was a woman who'd survived hell and refused to let it break her. A woman who'd chosen pride over comfort and dignity over safety. A woman who made Rafferty feel things he thought had died with his brother. And if he wanted any chance of being part of her life, he'd have to stop treating her like a victim and start treating her like an equal, even if that meant getting hurt, even if that meant she kept pushing him away, even if that meant risking the one thing he'd sworn never to risk again, his heart. Rafferty found Serafina 3 days later at a bookstore in Park Slope. The place was small and cramped, shelves packed so tight you had to turn sideways to navigate the aisles. The kind of store that smelled like old paper and survived on regulars who valued atmosphere over convenience. Serafina stood behind the register, helping an elderly customer find a book about gardening. She wore a simple black sweater and jeans. Her hair was pulled back. She looked tired, but alive. When the customer left, Rafferty approached the counter. Serafina's expression shuddered immediately. What are you doing here? Buying a book. Rafferty, I like to read. He picked up a volume from the display table without looking at the title. Is that allowed? She crossed her arms. You didn't come here to buy a book. No. He met her eyes. I came to see if you're okay. I'm fine. You're working in a bookstore that pays minimum wage and living in a shelter with roaches. That's not fine. Serafina's jaw tightened. I told you. I know what you told me. I'm not here to change your mind. I'm not here to offer help. I'm just here. Why? Rafferty set the book down carefully. Because someone should be. Because you spent 4 years alone while I built an empire that meant nothing. Because I'm tired of walking away from things that matter. I'm not yours to matter to. I know that too. They stood on opposite sides of the counter, a barrier of wood and old cash registers between them. You need to leave, Serafina said quietly. I will. After I buy this book. She looked at him for a long moment, then rang up the purchase without speaking. Rafferty paid cash and took the book without checking what it was. At the door he stopped. I'll be back tomorrow. Don't. Buying another book. Just a customer, nothing else. Rafferty? But he was already gone. Matt. He came back the next day, and the day after that. Every afternoon, Rafferty Vale walked into the bookstore, browsed for exactly 15 minutes, bought one book, and left. He didn't push, didn't try to talk beyond basic pleasantries, didn't overstay his welcome, just showed up. Serafina ignored him at first, helped other customers while he browsed, avoided eye contact, made it clear his presence was unwanted. But on the 5th day, something changed. "You're buying a lot of books you're never going to read," she said as he set another volume on the counter. Rafferty glanced at the title, The Complete Letters of Anton Chekhov. "How do you know I won't read them?" "Because yesterday you bought a romance novel and a manual on beekeeping, and today it's Chekhov." She rang it up. "Either you have the most eclectic taste in Brooklyn, or you're just grabbing whatever's closest. Maybe I'm expanding my horizons. Or maybe you're full of shit." The corner of Rafferty's mouth twitched. "That's possible too." Serafina bagged the book and slid it across the counter. Their fingers brushed for half a second. Both of them noticed. "Why are you really here?" she asked. "I told you, I'm buying books." "You're wasting money to annoy me." "Is it working?" "Yes." "Good." Rafferty picked up the bag. "See you tomorrow." "Don't you have an empire to run?" "The empire runs itself." He headed for the door. "I'd rather be here." He left before she could respond. On the 7th day, Serafina was waiting for him when he walked in. "We need to talk," she said. "Okay." "Not here." She glanced at her coworker, a college kid reading behind the counter. "Take your break, Danny." The kid disappeared into the back room. Serafina faced Rafferty across the empty store. "You can't keep doing this." "Buying books?" "Showing up, pretending this is normal, acting like we're—" She stopped. "Like we're anything." "What are we?" Rafferty asked quietly. "Nothing. We're nothing. You're the man who let my husband die, and I'm the widow who can't forgive you. That's all this is. All it can ever be. Is it?" "Yes." But her voice shook saying it. Rafferty stepped closer, not touching, just close enough that she'd have to look at him. "Then tell me to leave. Really leave. Forever. And I will." Serafina's breath caught. "Why would I believe you?" "Because I've never lied to you. Not once. Not even when the truth cost me." He held her gaze. "So tell me to go. And I'm gone." Silence filled the bookstore. Outside, traffic moved past. People lived their lives. The world kept turning. Inside, two people stood facing each other across years of grief and guilt, and something neither of them wanted to name. "I can't," Serafina whispered finally. "Can't what?" "Tell you to leave." Her eyes shimmered. "I don't know why. I should. I should hate you enough to mean it, but I can't." Rafferty's chest felt like it was cracking open. "Serafina, don't." She held up a hand. Don't say anything. Don't make this more than it is. Just—" She took a shaky breath. "Just buy your book and leave." He nodded slowly, picked up the nearest volume, paid, walked to the door, then stopped. "Your husband used to talk about you," he said without turning around. "Before everything. He'd call me late at night when he couldn't sleep. Tell me about the woman he'd married, how she was too smart for him, too good for him, how he didn't deserve her but was grateful every day anyway." Behind him, Serafina made a sound like breaking. "He was right," Rafferty continued. "He didn't deserve you, neither do I, but he loved you more than anything in this world. And if there's any part of me that's worth a damn, it's because I'm trying to honor that. Even if you never forgive me, even if you hate me forever, I'm trying." He left before she could respond. But when he looked back through the bookstore window, Serafina stood frozen behind the counter with tears streaming down her face. And Rafferty understood that whatever existed between them, hatred or hope or something more complicated than either, it wasn't over. It was just beginning. 3 days later, someone firebombed the bookstore. Rafferty got the call at 2 a.m. Marcus, voice tight. "Boss, we got a problem." He was awake instantly. "What happened?" "That bookstore in Park Slope. Someone torched it. Fire department just put it out." Rafferty's blood went cold. "Casualties?" "No. Happened after closing, but boss, the girl, Serafina, she was inside." The world tilted. "Is she alive?" Yeah, got out before the flames spread, but she's at the hospital, smoke inhalation. Rafferty was dressed and moving before Marcus finished. Which hospital? Methodist. But boss, there's something else. What? This wasn't random. Someone left a message, said next time they won't miss. The pieces fell into place. This was Mikey Torres. Had to be. The Vega crew going back on their word or Mikey operating independently. Either way, someone had just tried to kill Serafina, and Rafferty was going to bury them for it. Get everyone, he said into the phone. Every crew, every soldier. I want Mikey Torres in front of me before sunrise. Boss, now Marcus. He hung up and got in his car. The drive to Methodist Hospital took 8 minutes. Rafferty parked illegally and walked through the ER entrance like he owned it. The nurse at intake started to protest. One look from Rafferty shut her up. He found Serafina in a curtained exam area, oxygen mask on her face, soot streaking her skin. Her eyes were closed, but her chest moved steadily. Alive. Rafferty's legs almost gave out from relief. A doctor appeared, clipboard in hand. Are you family? Yes. The doctor looked skeptical, but didn't argue. She'll be fine. Minor smoke inhalation. We want to keep her overnight for observation, but there's no permanent damage. Rafferty nodded, unable to speak. The doctor left. Rafferty sat in the chair beside Serafina's bed and waited for her to wake up. When she finally did, her eyes found him immediately. They burned it down, she said, voice raw from smoke. I know. The bookstore. Everything. Just gone. I know. Tears slid down her soot-stained face. I had nothing, and now I have less than nothing. Rafferty reached out and took her hand. She didn't pull away. You have me, he said quietly. Serafina looked at their joined hands. That's what scares me. I know. They're coming for me, aren't they? Whoever did this. Not anymore. Rafferty's voice went cold. They won't get the chance. Something in his tone made Serafina's eyes widen. What are you going to do? What I should have done from the beginning. Rafferty, you don't have to forgive me. You don't have to like me. But you're not going back to that shelter. You're not sleeping on cardboard. You're not fighting this alone. I can't go back to your house. Then I'll get you an apartment, protected, private, somewhere they can't reach you. And what do I owe you for that? The question came out bitter. How does this end, Rafferty? With me dependent on you forever? With me becoming another possession in your empire? No. He leaned forward. It ends with you safe, that's all. Nothing's free in your world. You're right, Rafferty met her eyes. But some debts I'm willing to carry without collecting. Serafina studied his face for a long moment, looking for the lie, the angle, the manipulation. But Rafferty had no lies left. Just the truth that he'd do anything, sacrifice anything, to keep her alive. Okay, she whispered finally. Okay? Get me the apartment, keep me safe. But Rafferty, her grip on his hand tightened. If you're lying, if this is some play to control me, I'll disappear so completely you'll never find me. I believe you. Good. She closed her eyes, exhausted. Rafferty sat beside her bed until the nurse kicked him out at dawn, understanding that he'd just crossed a line he could never uncross. He'd stopped trying to repay a debt and started fighting for something far more dangerous, someone he couldn't afford to love but was already falling for anyway. Marcus had Mikey Torres in the warehouse by 6 a.m. Rafferty arrived to find the man zip-tied to a chair in the center of an empty concrete floor, blood already dripping from his nose where someone had started the questioning early. Two of Rafferty's enforcers stood nearby, knuckles bruised, waiting for orders. Mikey looked up when Rafferty walked in. Fear flashed across his face before he buried it under false bravado. Vale, he said through split lips, this is a mistake. Rafferty crossed the warehouse floor slowly. His footsteps echoed in the empty space. Is it? Carlos and I had a deal. I didn't touch the girl. I kept my word. Then why is the bookstore where she works a pile of ash? That wasn't me. Rafferty's fist connected with Mikey's jaw before the lie finished forming. The chair tipped backward, slamming Mikey's head against concrete. Blood sprayed across the floor. Try again, Rafferty said quietly. One of the enforcers righted the chair, Mikey spat blood and a tooth. Fuck you. I didn't do it. Someone left a message, said next time they won't miss. That sound like anyone you know? Could be anyone. The girl made enemies. Another hit. This time Rafferty's knuckles split open against Mikey's cheekbone. The pain felt distant, irrelevant. She made one enemy, Rafferty said. You. Because she broke your nose and made you look weak in front of your crew, so you decided to burn her alive to get your pride back. No, wrong answer. Rafferty pulled out his phone and made a call. It rang twice before Carlos Vega answered, voice thick with sleep. This better be good, Vale. I have Mikey Torres in front of me. He says he didn't firebomb the bookstore in Park Slope last night. Silence on the other end. Then, what bookstore? Rafferty's blood went cold. The one where Serafina works. Someone torched it, left a message. And you think Mikey did it? He's the only one with motive. He's an idiot, but he's not suicidal. Carlos sounded genuinely confused. I told him to stay away from your girl. He knows what happens if he crosses me. Then who? I don't know. But it wasn't us. Carlos paused. Vale, if someone's coming after your woman, it's not the Vega crew. We got no beef with you, and we sure as hell wouldn't break our word over a broken nose. The truth settled in Rafferty's chest like ice. If it wasn't Mikey, then someone else was targeting Serafina. Someone with a different reason. Someone Rafferty hadn't seen coming. My mistake, he said into the phone. You gonna kill him anyway? Rafferty looked at Mikey, bloodied and terrified, but telling the truth. No. Good. Because if you did, we'd have problems, and I don't want problems with you. The line went dead. Rafferty turned to his enforcers. Cut him loose, get him cleaned up, send him home. The men looked confused but obeyed. Mikey stared at Rafferty through swollen eyes. Just like that? Just like that. What changed? I believe you. Rafferty crouched down to eye level. But Mikey? If I find out you're lying, I'll kill everyone you love before I kill you. Understand? Mikey nodded frantically. Good. Get out. They cut the zip ties. Mikey stumbled to his feet and ran for the door like the building was on fire. Marcus appeared from the shadows. Boss, if it wasn't the Vega crew, then we're looking in the wrong direction. Rafferty's mind raced through possibilities. Who else would want her dead? Could be random, wrong place, wrong time. With a message? No. This was targeted. Rafferty pulled out his phone and called the hospital. I need to speak to Serafina Mercer, room 412. The nurse connected him. Serafina answered on the second ring, voice still rough. Rafferty? I need you to think carefully. In the past month, has anyone threatened you, followed you, said anything strange? What? Why? Just answer. Silence. Then, there was a guy at the shelter a few weeks ago. Rafferty's grip on the phone tightened. What guy? I don't know his name. He was asking questions about me, about where I worked, where I was from. Her voice went uncertain. He said he knew my husband. Every alarm in Rafferty's head started screaming. What did he look like? Tall? Maybe 50? Graying hair, expensive clothes that didn't fit the neighborhood. She paused. He had a scar across his knuckles. I noticed because he kept rubbing it. Rafferty knew that scar. He'd put it there himself. 6 years ago, during a territory war with a crew out of Queens, the leader had been a man named Vincent Corso. Ruthless, smart, connected enough to be dangerous, but not strong enough to hold territory against Rafferty's expansion. The war had ended when Rafferty killed Vincent's younger brother in a firefight, not on purpose, just collateral damage during a collection gone wrong. Vincent had sworn revenge, but then he'd disappeared, dropped off the radar completely, and Rafferty had forgotten about him, but Vincent hadn't forgotten. Serafina, Rafferty said carefully, do you remember anything else about him? He gave me money. Said it was for coffee. I told him I didn't want it, but he left it anyway. Her breath caught. Rafferty, what's going on? Stay at the hospital. Don't leave until I get there. You're scaring me. Good. Be scared. Lock your door. Don't let anyone in except nurses you recognize. I'm on my way. He hung up and turned to Marcus. Vincent Corso, Find him. Now. Marcus went pale. Corso? I thought he was dead. So did I. But he's alive. And he's been watching Serafina. Rafferty headed for the door. Get every crew on the street. Check his old haunts. Talk to anyone who might have seen him. I want him in front of me by noon. And if we can't find him, then we pray he makes a mistake before he kills her. The hospital felt different in daylight. Rafferty walked past security without slowing, took the stairs to the 4th floor, and found Serafina's room with its door closed and a uniformed cop stationed outside. The cop started to speak. Rafferty pulled out his wallet and showed him a badge that wasn't real, but looked real enough. I'm with her, he said. The cop hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, Serafina sat upright in bed, still wearing the hospital gown, soot washed from her face, but fear etched deep in her eyes. What's happening? She asked immediately. Rafferty closed the door. The man who approached you at the shelter. His name is Vincent Corso. He runs a crew out of Queens. I don't understand. Why would he? Because 6 years ago I killed his brother during a territory dispute, and now he's decided to settle the debt by taking someone from me. The color drained from Serafina's face. Taking someone? You mean killing me? Yes. Because of you. Because of something you did 6 years ago that has nothing to do with me. Yes. She laughed. The sound was broken and terrible. Of course this is happening, because being your brother's widow wasn't punishment enough. Now I get to die because you killed someone else's brother. The parallel wasn't lost on Rafferty. I won't let that happen. How? You didn't even know he was coming. You thought it was Mikey. You were wrong. Her voice rose. How many other people want revenge on you, Rafferty? How many other ghosts from your past are waiting to put a bullet in someone you care about? I don't know. That's not good enough. I know. Rafferty moved closer. I know it's not good enough. I know you're in danger because of me. I know this is my fault. But right now, we don't have time to assign blame. We need to keep you alive. Serafina's hands shook in her lap. I can't do this. I can't live like this. Looking over my shoulder, waiting for someone to... Her voice broke. I just wanted to work at a bookstore. I just wanted to be normal again. Rafferty crouched beside her bed. You will be. I promise. Don't promise me anything. Tears streamed down her face. Every promise you make turns to ash. Your brother believed in you, and he died. I trusted you to keep me safe, and someone burned down my job. So don't promise me shit, Rafferty. Just tell me the truth. What truth? Can you actually protect me? Or am I already dead and we're just waiting for it to happen? The question cut deeper than any knife. Rafferty could lie, could tell her everything would be fine, could offer false comfort that might ease her fear for a few hours. But Serafina deserved better than lies. I don't know, he said quietly. Vincent is smart, patient. If he's been planning this for 6 years, he's thought through every angle, every weakness, every way I might try to protect you. So what do I do? You let me move you somewhere safe, somewhere even Vincent can't reach, and you trust that I'll end this before he gets another chance. And if you can't, Rafferty met her eyes, then I die making sure he doesn't touch you. Serafina studied his face, looking for the calculation, the strategy, the empire builder making promises he wouldn't keep. But Rafferty had no strategy left. Just the desperate certainty that losing Serafina would destroy whatever remained of his humanity. Okay, she whispered finally. Okay? Move me. Hide me. Do whatever you have to do. Her gaze hardened. But Rafferty, when this is over, when Vincent's gone and I'm safe, I'm done. I'm leaving Brooklyn, leaving New York, leaving everything connected to you behind, because I can't keep being collateral damage in your wars. The words landed like bullets. Rafferty nodded slowly. I understand. Do you? Yes. Because he did. Finally. Completely. Loving Serafina meant accepting that she would leave, that she would choose safety over whatever existed between them, that she would survive him and move on and build a life somewhere he couldn't reach. And if that's what it took to keep her breathing, Rafferty would burn his entire empire to make it happen. The safe house was in Red Hook, Old warehouse converted into living space, 3 floors up with steel doors and reinforced windows. Marcus had it stocked with food and clothes and enough ammunition to hold off a small army. Rafferty installed Serafina there with 2 guards outside and instructions that no one, absolutely no one, got past the door without his personal authorization. How long? Serafina asked, standing in the industrial chic space that looked nothing like a home. Few days, maybe a week, however long it takes to find Vincent. And then what? Rafferty didn't answer. Serafina stepped closer. You're going to kill him. Yes. Just like that. No trial, no questions, just done. Just done. She studied him for a long moment. Does it ever bother you? How easy it is. What? Deciding someone needs to die, then making it happen. Her voice was soft but cutting. Do you ever wonder if you're wrong? If maybe the person deserved a chance? Rafferty had wondered that exact thing 1,000 times. Every face, every name, every person who'd crossed him and disappeared. But Vincent Corso wasn't one of them. He tried to burn you alive, Rafferty said quietly. He left a message saying next time he won't miss. That's not someone who deserves a chance. That's someone who needs to be erased. And you're the one who gets to decide that. In my world? Yes. Serafina turned away. Your world is terrifying. I know. And you don't want to leave it. The statement hung between them like an accusation. Rafferty could deny it, could claim he wanted out, could promise to walk away from the empire and build something clean with her. But they'd moved past lies. No, he admitted. I don't. Why? Because it's all I have. All I know how to be. Take away the empire and I'm nothing. Serafina looked back at him. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Probably true. She crossed to the window overlooking the water. Brooklyn spread out below them, gritty and beautiful and violent in ways tourists never saw. He really loved you, she said quietly. Your brother. He talked about you like you were a hero, like you'd saved him from something terrible. Rafferty's throat tightened. Our father was a drunk, beat our mother until she stopped fighting back, beat me when I tried to protect her. I got us out when I was 17, took care of both of them until cancer took her and distance took him. Distance? He wanted normal, college, career, marriage to a woman who read Chekhov and argued about literature. Rafferty's voice went rough. He wanted everything I couldn't give him, so he built it himself, and I let him go because I loved him enough to know he was better off without me. But you never really let him go, Serafina said. You kept tabs, sent money, cleaned up his messes. How did you know? Because that's what you do. You protect people by controlling everything around them, even when they don't want your protection. The words were too accurate to deny. Yeah, Rafferty said. That's what I do. Serafina turned to face him fully. What are you doing with me, Rafferty? Really? Is this guilt? Obligation? Some twisted need to replace what you lost? I don't know. That's not good enough. It's the truth. He moved closer. A month ago I thought I knew. Thought I was paying a debt, making things right. But somewhere between the bookstore and the hospital, and right now, he stopped. I don't know anymore. That's terrifying. Tell me about it. They stood 3 feet apart in a safe house that smelled like concrete and gun oil, 2 people trying to figure out what they were to each other while someone plotted to kill them both. I should hate you, Serafina whispered. I know. I should want you dead. Should want you to suffer the way I suffered. I know that too. But I don't. Her eyes filled with tears. And I don't understand why. Rafferty reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her face. His fingers came away wet. Maybe because we're both tired of being alone, he said quietly. Serafina leaned into his hand to spite herself. That's not enough. No, it's not. So what do we do? Rafferty had built an empire on having answers, on seeing 3 moves ahead, on never being caught unprepared. But standing in a safe house with his brother's widow crying in his arms, he had no answers left. We survive Vincent, he said finally, then we figure out the rest. Serafina pulled away. And if we don't survive, we will. You can't know that. No. Rafferty met her eyes. but I can make damn sure he dies trying. Marcus called 4 hours later with bad news. Vincent's gone underground. No one's seen him. No one knows where he's holed up. His voice was tight. Boss, this guy's a ghost. Rafferty stood on the roof of the safe house, watching sunset paint Brooklyn red. He's not a ghost. He's careful. There's a difference. Careful enough that we can't find him. Then we make him come to us. How? Rafferty's mind worked through options, discarding each one as too slow or too risky or too likely to get Serafina killed. Then one idea surfaced, terrible and dangerous and exactly the kind of play Vincent wouldn't expect. Spread the word, Rafferty said. Tell everyone, every crew, every informant, every person on our payroll that Serafina's dead, that the fire killed her, that I'm hunting whoever did it. Marcus went quiet. Boss, do it. Tonight. Make sure it reaches Vincent. And then what? Then we wait for him to celebrate, to let his guard down, to think he won. Rafferty's voice went cold. And when he surfaces, we kill him. This is a big risk. If Vincent figures out it's a trap, he won't, because he wants this too badly. He's been waiting 6 years for revenge. When he thinks he got it, he'll need to see the proof, need to gloat, need to make sure I know he won. And if you're wrong, then I die. But Serafina lives. That's the only outcome that matters. Marcus sighed. I'll spread the word. Do it quietly. Make it feel like something people aren't supposed to know. Rumors are more believable than announcements. Understood. The line went dead. Rafferty stood on the roof watching the city he'd conquered spread out below him, understanding that he'd just bet everything, his empire, his life, his future, on a lie Vincent Corso might not believe. But the alternative was waiting for Vincent to strike again, and Rafferty was done waiting. Well, the rumor spread like fire through dry grass. By midnight, every crew in Brooklyn knew that Serafina Mercer had died in the bookstore fire, that Rafferty Vale was hunting the person responsible, that bodies were going to drop until he got his revenge. Marcus monitored the chatter. It's working. People are talking. Someone will tell Vincent. Good. Rafferty sat in his study, whiskey untouched on the desk. How's she holding up? The girl? Angry. Wants to know why you're telling people she's dead. She doesn't need to know the plan. Boss, if this goes wrong, it won't. But Rafferty's hand shook slightly when he said it, because the truth was he didn't know if the plan would work, didn't know if Vincent would take the bait, didn't know if keeping Serafina in the dark was protection or cruelty. He just knew he couldn't lose her. Not to Vincent, not to anyone. Even if saving her meant lying to her one more time. Vincent surfaced on the third day, not in person. Through an intermediary, a low-level runner who approached Marcus outside a bar in Bensonhurst with a message. Vincent Corso wants to meet. Marcus relayed this to Rafferty immediately. It's a trap. Obviously. So we're not going. We're absolutely going. Rafferty checked the clip in his gun. Where and when? Red Hook, the old fish market, tonight at 11. The same place Rafferty had killed Vincent's brother 6 years ago. The symbolism wasn't subtle. He wants to kill you where it started, Marcus said. Let him try. Rafferty holstered the gun. Get everyone in position, snipers on the rooftops, back up 2 blocks out. And Marcus? Yeah? If something goes wrong, your only job is making sure Serafina stays safe. Understand? Marcus nodded grimly. Understood. Tikik. The old fish market smelled like rot and salt water. Rafferty arrived alone as instructed, walking through rusted gates into a cavernous space filled with shadows. Moonlight filtered through broken skylights, painting everything in shades of gray. Vincent Corso stood in the center of the market, flanked by 4 armed men. He looked older than Rafferty remembered, grayer, harder, the scar on his knuckles visible even from 20 feet away. Vale, Vincent said. Been a long time. Not long enough. Heard your girl died. Shame. I was hoping to do it myself. Rafferty's blood went cold. What are you talking about? Vincent smiled. The bookstore. Nice work. But that wasn't me. The world tilted. Bullshit, Rafferty said. You approached her at the shelter. You've been watching her. Oh, I've been watching, planning, waiting for the right moment. Vincent's smile widened. But I didn't burn down that bookstore. Someone beat me to it. Who? How should I know? Maybe you pissed off someone else. Maybe the girl's got her own enemies. Vincent shrugged. Either way, she's dead now. So my revenge is going to have to settle for killing you instead. Rafferty's mind raced. If Vincent didn't burn the bookstore, then someone else had. Someone else was targeting Serafina, and Rafferty had been chasing the wrong enemy. You're lying, he said. Am I? Vincent pulled out his phone and showed Rafferty a series of photos. Serafina at the shelter. Serafina at the bookstore. Serafina walking home at night, all dated before the fire. I was going to take my time, Vincent said. Make it hurt, make you watch. But someone else got there first and robbed me of my fun. So now, he nodded to his men. Now I just kill you and call it even. The 4 guards raised their weapons. Rafferty's hand moved to his gun. Then gunfire erupted from the rooftops. Marcus's snipers, right on time. Vincent's men dropped before they could fire. The crime boss dove for cover behind a rusted fish cart as bullets chewed through metal. Rafferty ran. Not toward Vincent, toward the exit. Because if Vincent wasn't the one who burned the bookstore, then Serafina was still in danger, and Rafferty had left her alone. Behind him, Marcus's men poured into the fish market. Gunfire echoed. Vincent screamed orders. But Rafferty was already gone. Running for his car. Running for the safe house. Running toward the woman he'd promised to protect from the wrong enemy. His phone rang. Unknown number. Rafferty answered while driving. What? A woman's voice, smooth, familiar in a way that made his blood freeze. Hello, Rafferty. He knew that voice. Elaine, he whispered, his brother's first wife. The woman he'd been married to before Serafina. The woman who'd disappeared after the divorce with a settlement big enough to disappear comfortably. The woman Rafferty had forgotten about completely. Surprised? Elaine asked. You should be. You ruined my life, Rafferty. Turned my husband against me. Made him fall in love with someone else. Then got him killed. What do you want? I wanted you to suffer. Wanted you to lose someone you loved the way I lost him. Her voice went cold. But then I realized something. You don't actually love anyone, do you? You just collect people, use them, throw them away when they're not useful anymore. Elaine, if you hurt her. Hurt her? Oh, Rafferty, I already did. The line went dead. Rafferty's hands tightened on the wheel so hard his knuckles went white. He called Marcus. No answer. He called the guards at the safe house. No answer. He called Serafina. The phone rang once before someone picked up. Not Serafina. Elaine. Looking for her? His ex-sister-in-law asked sweetly. She's right here, sleeping peacefully, for now. Where are you? Somewhere you'll never find us in time. But don't worry, I'm not going to kill her. Elaine's voice turned venomous. I'm going to make her wish she was dead, just like your brother made me wish I was dead, just like you made everyone who ever trusted you wish they'd never met you. Elaine, listen to me. No. You listen. You have 24 hours to decide, your empire or her life. Dismantle everything you've built, every crew, every operation, every scrap of power you've spent your life accumulating, and I'll let her go. Keep your empire, and I'll make sure she suffers every single day for the rest of her very long, very painful life. You're insane. I'm fair. More fair than you've ever been. The call ended. Rafferty sat in his car outside the safe house, staring at his phone, understanding with perfect clarity that he'd been fighting the wrong war the entire time. Vincent wanted revenge, but Elaine wanted destruction, and she'd just given Rafferty a choice no one could win. His empire or Serafina's life. Power or love. Everything he'd built, or the one person who'd made him question whether any of it mattered. Inside the safe house, he found both guards dead. Serafina's room empty. No signs of struggle. Just a note on the pillow written in Elaine's perfect handwriting. Tick-tock, Rafferty. The clock starts now. Rafferty stood alone in the empty room, surrounded by the wreckage of every choice he'd ever made, finally understanding that some debts couldn't be paid with violence. Some debts required sacrifice. And he had exactly 24 hours to decide what kind of man he wanted to die as. The King of Brooklyn, or the person who'd finally chosen love over power. Rafferty stood in the empty safe house staring at Elaine's note until the words blurred. 24 hours. His empire or Serafina's life. The choice should have been simple, obvious. He'd spent years building power from nothing, territory by territory, crew by crew, body by body. The empire was everything, his mother's dream, his brother's legacy twisted into something darker but no less real. Giving it up meant becoming nothing, but keeping it meant Serafina would suffer. And Rafferty had already caused her enough pain for 10 lifetimes. His phone rang. Marcus. Boss, we got Vincent. He's breathing but barely. Says he doesn't know where Elaine is. Says he had nothing to do with the kidnapping. He's telling the truth. How do you... Because Elaine just called me. She has Serafina. She's the one who burned the bookstore. She's been planning this the whole time. Marcus went quiet. Your brother's first wife? Yes. Jesus, how long is she? Doesn't matter. Rafferty's voice came out flat. Dead. She wants me to dismantle the empire. Every crew, every operation, everything. I have 24 hours or Serafina dies. That's insane. You can't... I know what I can't do, Marcus. Rafferty closed his eyes. But I also know what happens if I don't. So what's the play? The question hung in the air like smoke. Rafferty had built his entire life on having plays, strategies, angles, ways to win when winning looked impossible. But this wasn't a negotiation. This was a binary choice between two kinds of destruction. Find her, Rafferty said finally. Use every contact, every informant, every favor we're owed. I don't care what it costs. Find Elaine before the deadline. And if we can't? Rafferty opened his eyes and looked at the note again. Elaine's perfect handwriting mocking him from expensive paper. Then I make the choice she's forcing on me. He hung up. For the first time in 20 years, Rafferty Vale had no idea what he was going to do. The next 6 hours were brutal. Marcus mobilized every resource they had. Crews canvassed the city. Informants made calls. Street-level dealers asked questions in neighborhoods where Elaine might be hiding. Nothing. Elaine had planned this too well. She'd gone underground with resources Rafferty hadn't known she possessed and connections that shouldn't exist for a woman who disappeared 4 years ago with a divorce settlement. At 3 a.m., Rafferty sat in his study drinking whiskey that didn't touch the edges of his panic. Evelyn found him there, still dressed despite the hour. You look like hell, she said from the doorway. Feel worse. She crossed to the desk and sat down without asking. Marcus told me what happened. Did he tell you what Elaine wants? Yes. And? Evelyn studied him with eyes that had seen 20 years of his decisions. You're actually considering it, aren't you? Giving it all up. What choice do I have? You could find her. Kill Elaine. Take Serafina back by force. We've been looking for 6 hours. She's a ghost. Then make her surface. Hurt something she cares about. Force her hand. Rafferty had already thought of that. She doesn't care about anything. That's the problem. She's got nothing to lose and everything to gain by watching me destroy myself. Evelyn leaned back. So you're just going to surrender? Hand over the empire you bled for? Become nothing? If that's what it takes. And what happens after? When you've given up everything and Elaine decides to kill Serafina anyway? When you're left with nothing and no way to fight back? The question froze Rafferty's blood. Because Evelyn was right. Nothing guaranteed Elaine would keep her word. Nothing stopped her from taking everything Rafferty had, then killing Serafina out of spite. The only leverage he had was the empire itself. Give it up, and he had nothing left to bargain with. Keep it, and Serafina suffered. There's no good choice here, Rafferty said quietly. No, but there's a right one. Evelyn met his eyes. You find Elaine, you end this, and you do it before the deadline. We've been trying. Try harder. She stood. That girl didn't survive 4 years of hell just to die because you couldn't figure out where one bitter woman is hiding. You're Rafferty Vale. You built an empire from nothing. You survived wars that should have killed you. You don't get to give up now. She left before Rafferty could respond, but her words echoed in the empty study long after she was gone. Evelyn was right. Giving up wasn't an option. Finding Elaine was. Rafferty pulled out his phone and called the one person who might have answers. Vincent Corso answered on the 5th ring, voice thick with pain and morphine. Val, come to finish the job? I need information. Fuck you. Elaine, my brother's first wife. You know her? Silence. Then, why would I know her? Because she's been in Brooklyn for months, planning, watching. Someone helped her disappear after the divorce. Someone with connections. Rafferty's voice went hard. Was it you? No. You're lying. I'm dying, Vale. Got 3 bullets in me thanks to your snipers. Why would I lie now? The man had a point. Then who? Rafferty demanded. Who would help her? Vincent coughed. The sound was wet and awful. Maybe ask yourself why someone would hate you enough to help her in the first place. I've got a long list of people who hate me. Then start calling. Vincent's breathing went ragged. But Vale, when you find her, don't let her talk. Don't let her negotiate. Just kill her. Because women like that, women with nothing left to lose, they're more dangerous than any man with a gun. The line went dead. Rafferty sat in the dark, Vincent's advice settling in his chest like ice. Then his phone rang again. Unknown number, he answered. What? Rafferty Vale? A woman's voice. Young, scared. Who is this? My name's Katie. I work at a motel in Sheepshead Bay. The owner told me to call you if anyone asked questions about a woman matching a description. Rafferty's heart slammed against his ribs. What woman? Tall, blonde, 40s, checked in 3 days ago with another woman, brunette, looked sick or drugged or something. Katie's voice shook. The owner said you'd pay for information. What's the address? She gave it to him. Don't let them leave, Rafferty said. I'll be there in 20 minutes. You'll get 10,000 cash. And if she tries to leave before you get here, stall her, lock the door, call the cops. I don't care. Just don't let her disappear. He hung up and was out the door before the call ended. Marcus met him at the SUV, already armed. We got her? Maybe. Sheepshead Bay, the Starlight Motel. That's a shithole. Why would she? Because no one looks for ghosts in shitholes. Rafferty climbed into the passenger seat. Drive fast. They made it in 15 minutes. The Starlight Motel looked exactly like Katie described. A shithole. Cracked neon sign, parking lot full of potholes, the kind of place people went to disappear or do things they didn't want witnessed. Katie met them in the office, eyes wide with fear and greed. Room 7, she whispered. Haven't seen them leave. Rafferty handed her an envelope. She counted the money with shaking hands, then disappeared into the back office. Marcus checked his gun. How do you want to do this? Quiet. Fast. Elaine dies before she knows we're there. And the girl? We get her out? Then we burn this place to the ground. They crossed the parking lot toward room 7. The door was old, flimsy. One kick would take it down. Rafferty positioned himself. Marcus counted down silently. 3, 2, 1. The door exploded inward. Rafferty swept the room with his gun raised, ready for resistance. The room was empty. No Elaine, no Serafina. Just an unmade bed and a note taped to the mirror. Rafferty crossed the room and ripped it down. Nice try, Rafferty, but I'm not stupid enough to stay in one place. 16 hours left. Choose wisely. Rage exploded in Rafferty's chest. He put his fist through the mirror, glass embedding in his knuckles. Blood dripped onto the cheap carpet. Marcus grabbed his shoulder. Boss! She played us. Rafferty's voice came out strangled. She knew we'd find this place. Knew we'd come running. She's been 3 steps ahead the entire time. So what do we do? Rafferty looked at his bloody hand, at the shattered mirror, at the empty room that proved Elaine was smarter than he'd given her credit for. We go back, he said finally. We regroup, and we figure out what she actually wants. She told you what she wants. The Empire. No! Rafferty's mind worked through the angles. That's what she said. But people like Elaine don't just want revenge. They want vindication. They want the person who hurt them to admit they were wrong, to suffer publicly, to be destroyed in front of everyone who ever respected them. Marcus frowned. So she doesn't actually want you to dismantle the Empire? She wants me to try. Wants me to humiliate myself. Wants everyone to see the great Rafferty Vale brought to his knees by a woman he forgot existed. Rafferty headed for the door. That's her real play. Not the Empire. the humiliation. How does that help us? Because if I know what she really wants, I can give her something better. Like what? Rafferty's expression went cold. Me, bucking. By sunrise, Rafferty had a plan. Not a good plan, not even a smart plan, but the only plan that gave Serafina a chance. He gathered his crew bosses in the warehouse where this had all started. 15 men who'd killed for him, bled for him, built fortunes under his protection. They stood in a circle waiting for orders. "We're done," Rafferty said. Silence. Then one of the bosses, Tommy Riggs, a man who'd been with Rafferty since the beginning, stepped forward. "Boss, what are you talking about?" "The Empire. It's over. I'm disbanding every crew, returning every territory, shutting down every operation." The warehouse erupted. "You can't be serious. This is suicide. We've got wars on 3 fronts." "Enough," Rafferty's voice cut through the chaos. "I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you what's happening. By noon today, this organization stops existing. You take what you can carry and you disappear. Anyone who stays gets killed when the vacuum collapses." Tommy stepped closer. "This is about the girl, isn't it? The widow." "Yes." "So you're throwing away everything we built for a woman who hates you?" "Yes." "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." "Probably," Rafferty met his eyes. "But it's my choice. You got 12 hours to clear out. Use them wisely." He turned to leave. Tommy's voice stopped him. "Boss, if you do this, if you really dismantle everything, you know what happens next, right? Every crew we've been holding back comes for this territory. Every enemy we made shows up looking for revenge. It won't just be you who suffers. It'll be everyone. Every shop owner paying us protection. Every dealer working our corners. Every person who relied on us to keep order." "I know." "And you're okay with that?" Rafferty looked at the men who'd followed him into hell more times than he could count. Men who'd sacrificed for the Empire. Men who deserved better than what he was about to do to them. "No," he said quietly. "I'm not okay with it. But I'm doing it anyway." He walked out of the warehouse knowing he'd just signed death warrants for half of Brooklyn. But at least Serafina would be alive. By 10 a.m., word spread through the city like wildfire. Rafferty Vale was disbanding his empire. Crews were scattering, operations shutting down, territory going unclaimed. The power vacuum started immediately. Rival gangs moved in. Violence erupted on corners that had been peaceful for years. Shop owners called Rafferty's office begging for protection that no longer existed. And through it all, Rafferty sat in his study making calls to confirm what everyone already knew. Yes, it was real. Yes, he was done. Yes, the Empire was over. Marcus appeared in the doorway at 11, looking shell-shocked. "Boss, it's chaos out there. 3 shootings in the last hour. More coming." "I know. People are calling you a coward, saying you went soft over a woman." "Let them." "Boss, I need you to do something for me." Rafferty pulled an envelope from his desk drawer. Inside is everything. Account numbers, property deeds, contacts, everything I built. If something happens to me, it's yours. Marcus stared at the envelope like it might explode. "You're serious?" "Take it." "And do what with it?" "Whatever you want. Rebuild, retire, burn it. I don't care." Rafferty met his eyes. "Just make sure Serafina gets out of this alive. That's all that matters now." Marcus took the envelope slowly. "You know Elaine might kill you both anyway, right? This might all be for nothing." "I know." "So why do it?" Rafferty thought about his brother, about the letters he'd thrown away, about every choice he'd made that put power over people. "Because for once in my life," he said quietly, "I want to choose right over easy." Marcus nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, boss. I think your brother would be proud." He left before Rafferty could respond. At 11:45, Rafferty's phone rang. "Elaine." "I'm impressed," she said. "You actually did it. I'm watching the news, watching your empire collapse in real time. It's beautiful." "Where is she?" "Safe. For now." "But Rafferty," her voice went cold. "This isn't enough. You dismantled the organization, but you're still breathing, still walking around like you matter. That needs to change." Rafferty's blood froze. "We had a deal. We had terms. You met them. But I've decided I want more." What more could you possibly want? I want you to suffer the way I suffered, the way your brother made me suffer when he fell in love with someone else, when he threw away our marriage like it meant nothing, when he looked at me with pity instead of love. That wasn't my fault, but that you introduced them. Elaine's voice shook with rage. At some stupid party you threw. You brought her into our lives. You smiled while she stole my husband. You did nothing while he divorced me and married her and forgot I existed. The memory surfaced. A gallery opening. Rafferty's brother nervous in a suit that didn't fit. Serafina laughing at something someone said. The two of them talking by the wine table while Rafferty handled business in the corner. He'd thought nothing of it at the time, but apparently Elaine had been watching. I didn't know, Rafferty started. You never know. That's your problem. You destroy lives without even noticing. Elaine took a breath. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to come to the place where it all started, where you introduced them, where you ruined my life, and you're going to kneel in front of everyone and admit what you did. And then you let her go? Then we'll see. That's not good enough. It's all you're getting. You have 1 hour. The old gallery on Kent Avenue. Come alone, come unarmed, come ready to beg. The line went dead. Rafferty sat in his study, hands shaking, understanding that Elaine had never intended to honor any deal. She wanted him destroyed completely, empire gone, pride shattered, life over, and she was willing to kill Serafina to make it happen. Marcus appeared in the doorway. I heard. What's the play? Rafferty stood. I'm going alone like she asked. That's suicide. Probably. Let me come with you. Backup at minimum. No. If she sees anyone else, she kills Serafina immediately. Rafferty pulled his gun and set it on the desk. I'm going unarmed. I'm going to do exactly what she wants, and I'm going to pray it's enough. And if it's not? Rafferty looked at the weapon he'd carried for 20 years. The gun that had killed more people than he could count. The tool that had built and maintained an empire that no longer existed. Then at least I tried, he said quietly. At least for once I chose her over everything else. Marcus gripped his shoulder. Good luck, boss. Thanks. Rafferty walked out of his study, through the empty mansion, into the SUV that Marcus insisted on driving. The gallery on Kent Avenue looked the same as it had 6 years ago. Converted warehouse, big windows, white walls that had once held art but now held only shadows. Rafferty stood outside, watching through the glass. Inside, Elaine waited in the center of the empty space. Beside her, tied to a chair, was Serafina, alive, conscious, terrified. Rafferty's heart slammed against his ribs. He crossed the street and walked through the unlocked door. Elaine smiled when she saw him. Right on time. I always appreciated that about you, Rafferty. Punctual to your own execution. Rafferty ignored her. His eyes locked on Serafina. She had a bruise on her cheek, rope burns on her wrists, but she was breathing. Let her go, he said. Not yet. First you kneel. Elaine, kneel! Rafferty dropped to his knees on the concrete floor. Elaine circled him slowly. Do you know what it's like to be forgotten? To love someone with everything you have and watch them fall in love with someone else? To become invisible while they build a new life? I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix it. Sorry doesn't give me back the years I lost. The humiliation, the loneliness. She stopped in front of him. But watching you lose everything, watching you kneel, that helps. You got what you wanted. The empire's gone. I'm on my knees. Let her go. Elaine looked at Serafina. You know what's funny? I hated you for years. Hated you for stealing him, for being everything I wasn't, for making him happy when I couldn't. Serafina's voice came out hoarse. I never meant... But now? Elaine pulled a gun from her jacket. Now I realize you were just another victim. Another person Rafferty destroyed without even trying, so killing you would be mercy. She aimed the gun at Serafina's head. Rafferty moved without thinking. Lunged forward, grabbed Elaine's arm. The gun went off, bullet slamming into the wall. They hit the floor hard, Rafferty's weight pinning Elaine down. She fought like a wild animal, clawing, biting, screaming. The gun skittered across the floor. Rafferty's hands found Elaine's throat, squeezed. Her eyes went wide, desperate, terrified. And for one perfect second, Rafferty wanted to kill her. wanted to watch the life drain from her eyes the way he'd watched it drain from dozens of people who'd crossed him. But Serafina's voice cut through the rage. "Rafferty, don't." He looked up. Serafina had gotten free somehow, stood 3 feet away, the gun in her shaking hands. "Don't become this," she said quietly. "Don't let her turn you into the monster she thinks you are." Rafferty's hands loosened. Elaine gasped for air beneath him. And Rafferty understood what Serafina was offering. Not forgiveness, not absolution, just a chance to choose differently. He stood slowly, stepping away from Elaine. The woman coughed and sobbed on the floor, broken in ways that had nothing to do with physical pain. "It's over," Rafferty said. "It's done." Elaine looked up at him with eyes full of hate. "You took everything from me." "I know, and I'm sorry, but killing us won't bring any of it back." "Maybe not." Elaine struggled to her feet. "But at least I'll know you suffered." She lunged for the gun in Serafina's hands. The shot rang out before Rafferty could move. Elaine dropped to the floor, blood spreading across white concrete. Serafina stood frozen, the gun still raised, face blank with shock. Rafferty crossed to her slowly, took the weapon from her hands, set it down gently. "It's okay," he said quietly. "It's over now." Serafina looked at him with eyes that had seen too much death. "Is it? Is any of this really over?" Rafferty pulled her into his arms as sirens wailed in the distance. And for the first time in his entire life, Rafferty Vale had absolutely no answer to give. The sirens grew louder. Rafferty held Serafina in the empty gallery, while Elaine's blood spread across white concrete, understanding that the police would arrive in minutes, and everything that happened next would determine whether either of them walked away from this alive. Serafina pulled back from his arms, her entire body shaking. "I killed her." "You defended yourself." "I killed her." Her voice broke. "I pulled the trigger. I watched her fall. Serafina." Rafferty gripped her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "Listen to me. When the cops get here, you tell them exactly what happened. She kidnapped you. She held you at gunpoint. You fought back. That's the truth." "And what about you? What do you tell them?" Rafferty looked at the gun on the floor, at Elaine's body, at the wreckage of everything he'd built scattered across Brooklyn like shrapnel. "I tell them I'm done," he said quietly. The first police car screeched to a halt outside. Rafferty released Serafina and stepped away from her, hands raised, making himself visible through the gallery windows, showing the cops he wasn't a threat, that this wasn't a hostage situation, that the danger had already passed. Officers poured through the door, weapons drawn, shouting commands that blurred together into noise. Rafferty knelt slowly, hands behind his head, eyes on the floor. Beside him, Serafina did the same. And as handcuffs closed around Rafferty's wrists, he understood with perfect clarity that the empire he'd spent 20 years building had just ended on a gallery floor where it had begun. Full circle. Complete. Done. The interrogation room smelled like stale coffee and fluorescent desperation. Rafferty sat across from two detectives who looked like they'd won the lottery. Getting Rafferty Vale in handcuffs was the kind of collar that made careers, made headlines, made the years of chasing rumors and dead ends feel worth it. Detective Martinez leaned forward. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly. Elaine Mercer kidnapped Serafina Mercer, your brother's widow, and you went to rescue her." "Yes." "Unarmed." "Yes." "After dismantling your entire criminal organization." Rafferty met the detective's eyes. "I don't know what organization you're talking about. I'm a businessman, real estate mostly, some investments." Martinez smiled. "Right, a businessman who just happened to be at a gallery where a woman was shot to death. I was trying to save someone. By destroying evidence, by letting the shooter walk free?" Serafina acted in self-defense. "Elaine tried to kill her. The gun will prove it." "We'll see what forensics says." Martinez pulled out a folder thick with papers. "But let's talk about your business, the real estate, the investments, the protection rackets, the territory disputes, the bodies that keep turning up in Brooklyn with your fingerprints all over them." Rafferty said nothing, because anything he said would be used to bury him. And he'd made peace with that possibility the moment he'd dismantled the empire. Detective Chen, the quiet one, spoke for the first time. "We've been watching you for years, Mr. Vale. waiting for you to make a mistake, waiting for something we could prove in court. And now you've handed us everything. Witnesses saying you ordered the shutdown of criminal operations. Crew bosses confirming you ran the whole show. Even your own people turning on you. Then you don't need my confession, Rafferty said. No, but it would make things easier. Martinez leaned back. Help us understand. Why now? Why throw away everything you built? The question hung in the air. Rafferty could lie, could play dumb, could lawyer up and refuse to say another word. But he was tired of lying, tired of hiding, tired of being the man his empire required him to be. Because I love someone more than I loved power, he said quietly. And that's something you can't understand unless you've had to choose. Martinez and Chen exchanged glances. That's it? Martinez asked. That's your whole defense, love? I'm not defending anything. I'm just telling you the truth. The truth is you ran a criminal empire that destroyed lives. I know what I did. Rafferty's voice went hard. I know every choice I made, every person I hurt, every life I ruined. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not claiming I'm innocent. I'm just saying that for once, one time, I chose right over easy. And if that's not enough for you, then do what you have to do. The detective stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. Then Martinez stood. We'll be back. They left Rafferty alone in the interrogation room with his thoughts and the weight of every decision that had led to this moment. Boss. 6 hours later, a lawyer Rafferty had never met appeared. The man looked expensive. Silk tie, Italian shoes, the kind of attorney who charged $1,000 to answer the phone. Mr. Vale, he said, extending his hand. My name is Richard Castellano. I've been retained on your behalf. Rafferty didn't shake. By who? That's confidential. But suffice to say, you have friends who don't want to see you go to prison. I don't want favors. This isn't a favor. This is pragmatism. Castellano sat down and opened his briefcase. The police have nothing on you. No physical evidence, no paper trail, just hearsay from people who are either too scared to testify or too smart to incriminate themselves. And as for the shooting, Ms. Mercer has already given a statement confirming self-defense. The DA isn't going to prosecute. Rafferty processed this slowly. So I'm free to go? With conditions. You stay in New York. You make yourself available for further questioning. And you don't rebuild whatever it is you dismantled. Castellano's expression went sharp. My client was very clear on that last point. You're done with the life, permanently. Who's your client? Confidential. Then tell them thank you, but I don't need their help. Castellano closed his briefcase. Mr. Vale, you can refuse all you want, but the paperwork's already filed. The statement's already given. You're walking out of here whether you like it or not. What you do after that is your choice. He left before Rafferty could argue. 20 minutes later, a uniformed officer unlocked the interrogation room door. You're free to go. Rafferty stood slowly, joints aching from 6 hours in a metal chair. What about Serafina Mercer? Already released. She's waiting for you outside. He walked through the precinct in a daze, past detectives who glared at him like he'd gotten away with murder, past officers who muttered under their breath about corruption and money buying justice. Maybe they were right. Maybe Rafferty had gotten away with things he deserved to pay for. But stepping out into cold Brooklyn air and seeing Serafina waiting on the precinct steps, Rafferty couldn't bring himself to care about justice. He only cared that she was alive. They stood on the steps in silence for a long moment. Serafina looked exhausted, hollowed out, like she'd aged 10 years in the past 24 hours. They said I acted in self-defense, she said quietly. Said I won't be charged. Good. Is it? She looked at him with eyes full of something Rafferty couldn't name. I killed someone, Rafferty. I pulled a trigger and watched a woman die. And everyone's acting like it's fine, like it doesn't matter, like I should just go home and forget it happened. You were protecting yourself. I know what I was doing. Her voice cracked. But that doesn't make it easier, doesn't make me feel less like a murderer. Rafferty wanted to tell her it would get better, that the guilt would fade, that she'd learn to live with what she'd done. But he'd never learned how to live with his own choices. So he stayed silent. What happens now? Serafina asked. I don't know. Your empire, gone. And the people who worked for you, scattered, fighting over scraps, dying in the vacuum I created. Rafferty looked out at Brooklyn spread before them. I destroyed everything trying to save you, and I'd do it again. Serafina's breath caught. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. Because I can't carry that. Her eyes filled with tears. I can't carry the weight of knowing you gave up everything for me. Knowing people died because you chose me over them. I can't. She pressed her hands to her face. I can't be worth that much. Rafferty stepped closer. You don't get to decide your worth, I do. And you're worth more than any empire. You're wrong. Maybe, but I believe it anyway. They stood on the precinct steps as the city moved around them. Cars passing, people walking, life continuing like the world hadn't just ended. I'm leaving, Serafina said finally. The words hit like bullets. Where? I don't know yet. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere no one knows me. Somewhere I can figure out who I am when I'm not surviving you. Rafferty nodded slowly. When? Tomorrow. Next week. Soon. She met his eyes. I need to go, Rafferty. I need to leave this city and everything in it behind. Including you. I understand. Do you? Yes. He forced the word out. Because you were right all along. Being near me is dangerous. Loving me is dangerous. And I've caused you enough pain for 10 lifetimes. Serafina's tears spilled over. I don't love you. I know. I hate you for what you did to my husband, for the choices you made, for dragging me into your world. I know that too. But I also... Her voice broke completely. I also can't imagine never seeing you again, and I don't know what to do with that. Rafferty reached out slowly and wiped the tears from her face. You survive it. You leave. You build something beautiful somewhere I can't reach, and you forget I exist. That's not fair to you. Nothing about this is fair. He dropped his hand. But it's right. And for once, I'm choosing right. Serafina looked at him for a long moment. Then she stood on her toes and kissed him. Not passion, not desire, just goodbye compressed into a moment that tasted like salt and regret. When she pulled away, Rafferty memorized her face, the curve of her jaw, the color of her eyes, every detail he'd need to carry when she was gone. Thank you, she whispered, for saving me, for choosing me, for being more than the monster I thought you were. Serafina, don't. She stepped back. Don't make this harder. Just let me go. So Rafferty did. He watched her walk down the precinct steps into a taxi that had been waiting, into a future that didn't include him. And when the cab disappeared around the corner, Rafferty Vale stood alone on the steps, understanding that he'd finally done the one thing he'd never thought possible. He'd let someone go because he loved them, not because it benefited him, not because it served his empire, just because it was right. The mansion felt like a mausoleum. Rafferty walked through empty rooms that had once housed power and now held only echoes. The study where he'd made decisions that shaped Brooklyn. The kitchen where he and Serafina had shared midnight coffee. The library where his brother's books still lined the shelves. Evelyn found him there at sunset, holding a worn copy of Chekhov. She's really gone? The housekeeper asked. Yes. And you let her go? Yes. Evelyn sat down in the leather chair across from him. I've worked for you for 20 years, Rafferty, watched you build an empire from nothing, watched you make choices that should have killed you, watched you survive things that would have broken other men. And I've never been more proud of you than I am right now. The words cracked something open in Rafferty's chest. I destroyed everything, he said quietly. The empire, the crews, the territory, all of it gone because I couldn't let her die. You chose love over power. That's not destruction, that's growth. Feels the same. It does at first. Evelyn's expression softened. But give it time. You'll see the difference. Rafferty set the book down. What do I do now? Whatever you want. You're free for the first time in your life. Actually free. No empire to maintain, no enemies to fight, no guilt crushing you into the ground. She stood. So figure out who Rafferty Vale is when he's not being the king of Brooklyn. She left him alone with that question. Rafferty sat in the library as darkness filled the mansion, trying to imagine a future that didn't involve violence or strategy or power. Trying to imagine just being. It felt impossible. What, 3 weeks passed like wounds healing slowly. Rafferty didn't rebuild, didn't reclaim territory, didn't return calls from former crew bosses begging him to put the empire back together. He just existed. Walked through Brooklyn neighborhoods that had once been his kingdom, ate at diners where no one recognized him, sat in parks watching people live lives that had nothing to do with crime or power. Marcus checked in periodically. "Boss, we could still fix this. A few strategic moves and we'd be back in business." "No. But the vacuum, people are dying out there. That's not my responsibility anymore." Marcus stared at him like he'd gone insane. "Since when?" "Since I decided being alive was better than being feared." The lieutenant shook his head. "I don't understand you anymore." "Good. That means I'm changing." Marcus left looking confused and disappointed, but Rafferty felt something he hadn't felt in 20 years. Peace, not happiness, not contentment, just the absence of constant war. It was enough. On a Thursday morning, 6 weeks after Elaine died, Rafferty walked into the garden behind his mansion. The roses Serafina had brought back to life were blooming, blood-red petals opening toward weak spring sunlight. His mother's garden restored by his brother's widow in ways Rafferty could never have managed alone. He found gardening gloves on the bench, not the ones Serafina had left behind, new ones. And beside them, a book. Rafferty picked it up carefully. The Complete Letters of Anton Chekhov. The same volume he'd bought at the bookstore, the same one Serafina had mentioned during their midnight conversations. Inside the front cover, handwriting he'd memorized. "These are better than the stories." In the letters, he finally tells the truth. S. Rafferty sat on the bench, holding the book like it might disappear. She'd been here. Recently. While he was out. While he wasn't watching. She'd come back to tend the roses, and left him truth disguised as literature. He opened to a random page and started reading. An hour later, he was still there, lost in words written by a dead Russian about love and loss and the impossibility of truly knowing another person. Evelyn found him as the sun reached its peak. "You've got a visitor." Rafferty looked up. "Who?" "She didn't give a name, just said to tell you the roses need pruning." His heart stopped. He stood slowly and walked to the house on legs that barely worked. Through the kitchen, down the hallway, to the front door he'd watched Serafina walk through 6 weeks ago. She stood on the porch wearing a simple dress and carrying nothing. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Serafina said, "I tried to leave." "Where did you go?" "Vermont. Rented a cabin by a lake. Spent 6 weeks reading and thinking and trying to forget you existed." She stepped closer. "It didn't work. Serafina, I'm still angry at you. I still haven't forgiven you for your brother. I still don't know if I ever will." Her voice shook. "But I also can't stop thinking about the man who gave up everything to save me, who chose right even when it destroyed him, who let me go because he loved me more than he loved himself." Rafferty's throat closed. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I came back. I don't know for how long. I don't know what this is. I just know I couldn't stay away." She met his eyes. "The question is, do you want me here?" Rafferty could play it safe, could tell her to leave again, could protect them both from whatever complicated mess existed between them. But he'd spent his entire life playing it safe with everything except power. Time to try something different. "Yes," he said. "I want you here. Even though I might leave again? Even though I can't promise this works? Even though." Serafina studied his face for a long moment. Then she stepped across the threshold into the house that had once been her prison and was now something else entirely. "The roses really do need pruning," she said. "I know. I was waiting for you." "That's presumptuous." "It's hopeful. There's a difference." Something that might have been a smile touched her lips. "Show me where the shears are." Bemegig. They worked in the garden until sunset painted Brooklyn gold. Rafferty pruned while Serafina weeded, both of them moving around each other with careful distance. Not touching, not speaking more than necessary, just existing in the same space without the weight of empire or death crushing down on them. When the light started failing, Serafina sat on the bench and pulled off her gloves. "I found work," she said, "at a library in Park Slope. It's part-time. Doesn't pay much. but it's mine. That's good. I also rented an apartment. 1 bedroom, 3rd floor walk-up. Nothing special. Rafferty's chest tightened. You're not staying here? No. She met his eyes. I need my own space, my own life, something that exists separate from you, but... She paused. But I'd like to have dinner with you sometimes, if you want. I want. And maybe tend the garden together. I'd like that. Serafina looked at the roses blooming around them. Your mother planted these? Yes. Your brother loved them. I know. Do you think... Her voice went soft. Do you think he'd forgive you for what you did? For choosing the empire over him? The question Rafferty had been asking himself for 4 years. No, he said honestly. I don't think he would. I think he'd be disappointed, angry, hurt in ways I can't fix. But I also think he'd want me to try to be better, to choose differently next time, to honor his memory by becoming the person he believed I could be instead of the monster I became. Serafina's eyes shimmered. That's a good answer. It's the truth. I know. She stood slowly. I should go. My bus leaves in 20 minutes. Rafferty walked her to the door. On the porch, she turned back. This isn't forgiveness, she said. What I'm offering, it's not absolution or closure or anything clean. It's just possibility. The chance that maybe 2 broken people can figure out how to be okay in the same space. That's enough. Is it? Rafferty thought about the empire he'd lost, the power he'd surrendered, the life he'd lived for 20 years that no longer existed. And he thought about Serafina standing in his garden, bringing dead roses back to life. Yes, he said, it's more than enough. She left without kissing him goodbye. But as Rafferty watched her walk down the street toward the bus stop, he understood that this was better than goodbye. This was a beginning, fragile, uncertain, built on the ruins of everything that came before, but a beginning nonetheless. Summer arrived slowly in Brooklyn. Rafferty spent his days reading in the library and his evenings in the garden. He took walks through neighborhoods that had once been battlegrounds and saw them differently now, not as territory to control, but as communities surviving despite him. He donated money to repair the bookstore that had burned, anonymously, through lawyers who made sure his name never appeared on any paperwork. He set up a fund for shop owners who'd lost protection when the empire collapsed. Not as payment, just as acknowledgement that his choices had cost them too. And twice a week, Serafina came for dinner. They talked about books, about the city, about small things that had nothing to do with death or empire. Sometimes she stayed until midnight, drinking wine and arguing about Chekhov's letters versus his stories. Sometimes she left after an hour, citing early shifts at the library. Rafferty never pushed for more, never asked when she'd forgive him, never questioned what they were to each other. He just showed up, cooked meals, tended the garden, and let Serafina decide what happened next. On a Tuesday evening in late July, she arrived carrying a small overnight bag. The air conditioning in my apartment broke, she said. I was wondering... Stay here, Rafferty said immediately. Guest room, as long as you need. Serafina set the bag down. Just until it's fixed. A few days, maybe. However long you need. She stayed for a week. Then 2. Then she stopped mentioning when she'd leave. On the first night she didn't go home, they sat in the garden after dinner, watching stars appear over Brooklyn. I talked to a therapist, Serafina said quietly. About everything. About your brother. About Elaine. About you. Rafferty's stomach tightened. What did they say? They said, I'm allowed to feel complicated things. That grief and anger and whatever this is can exist at the same time. That I don't have to choose between hating you for the past and... She stopped. And what? And caring about you despite it. The words hung in the warm air between them. Do you? Rafferty asked. Care about me? Serafina looked at him directly. Yes. I hate that I do. I wish I didn't, but I can't seem to stop. I'm sorry. Don't apologize, just... She took a breath. Just tell me you're different now. That the man who let his brother die isn't the man sitting next to me. Rafferty wanted to lie. Wanted to promise he'd changed completely. That he was someone new. but they'd moved beyond lies. I'm trying to be different, he said carefully. I'm making different choices, choosing people over power. But the capacity for what I was, that doesn't just disappear. It's always there, waiting. That's terrifying. I know. But also honest. It's all I have left. The truth. Serafina turned to face him fully. If I do this, if I let myself care about you, I need to know you won't go back, won't rebuild the empire, won't become that person again. I can't promise the future, then promise today and tomorrow and the day after that. Her voice was fierce. Promise me that every day you'll choose me over power, over violence, over everything you were. Rafferty met her eyes. I promise. Mean it. I do. He reached out slowly and took her hand. I choose you, Serafina, today, tomorrow, however many days you give me. I choose you. She studied his face in the darkness, looking for the lie, the angle, the calculation. But Rafferty had no angles left, just the truth of a man who'd lost everything and found something better in the ruins. Okay, she whispered finally. Okay. She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, and they sat together in the garden his mother planted, his brother loved, and Serafina had brought back to life. And for the first time since his brother died, Rafferty felt something that might have been hope. Fall came to Brooklyn in shades of gold and red. Serafina officially moved into the mansion in September. Not into Rafferty's room. She took the guest suite on the second floor with windows overlooking the garden. Her own space within his space. Independent but connected. They developed routines, coffee in the morning before she left for the library, dinner together when her shifts allowed, weekend mornings in the garden while the city woke around them. And slowly, so slowly Rafferty almost didn't notice, the guilt that had crushed him for 4 years began to lift, not disappear, never disappear, but lighten enough that he could breathe without feeling like he was drowning. On a Sunday in October, Serafina found him in the study going through old papers. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Reading my brother's letters. The ones he sent me. The ones I threw away." Rafferty held up a stack of pages Marcus had retrieved from storage. "Turns out, I couldn't get rid of them. Just put them somewhere I wouldn't see them." Serafina sat beside him. "What do they say?" "That he loved me. That he forgave me for being absent. That he hoped one day I'd find what he'd found with you." Rafferty's voice went rough. "That he knew I was trying even when I failed. He always saw the best in you. More than I deserved." "Maybe." Serafina took one of the letters and read it silently. "But maybe he also saw who you could be if you stopped being afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of being loved, of being seen, of being human instead of invincible." Rafferty had spent his entire life building walls, becoming untouchable, turning himself into something more than human so he couldn't be hurt. But sitting in the study with Serafina reading his brother's letters, he understood that invincibility was just another prison. "I'm tired of being afraid," he said quietly. "Good." She set the letter down and looked at him. "Because I need you to be brave enough to let me love you, even though it scares me, even though I don't know if it's right, even though part of me still hates you for what you did." "Serafina." "I love you, Rafferty." The words came out broken but certain. "I don't want to. I've tried not to. But I do. And I need to know if you love me too. Not as penance, not as obligation, but actually." Rafferty had said those words to exactly one person in his entire life. His mother. Before she died. Before he became the person the empire required. Saying them again felt like stepping off a cliff. But Serafina deserved the truth. "I love you," he said, "more than I've ever loved anything, more than power, more than survival, more than myself." Serafina's eyes filled with tears. "Even though I can't forgive you? Even though I might never fully trust you? Even though?" She crossed the space between them and kissed him. Not goodbye this time. Not regret. Just the terrifying possibility of something real. When she pulled away, Rafferty tasted salt and hope. This is going to be complicated, Serafina whispered. I know. We're going to hurt each other. Probably. And it might not work. It might not. But you're willing to try anyway? Rafferty looked at the woman his brother had loved. The woman who'd survived him. The woman who'd brought dead roses back to life and taught him that some things were worth more than empires. Yes, he said. I'm willing to try. Kit. Winter returned to Brooklyn quiet and clean. Rafferty and Serafina spent the holidays in the mansion with Evelyn cooking and Marcus stopping by with expensive wine he claimed he'd bought legally. They were building something, not a family exactly, but a chosen collection of people who'd survived their own hells and decided to keep breathing anyway. On Christmas Eve, Serafina led Rafferty to the garden. Snow covered the rose bushes, protecting them through the cold. The same bushes his mother had planted decades ago. The same ones his brother had tended. The same ones Serafina had refused to let die. I have something for you, she said. She pulled a small envelope from her coat pocket. Inside was a photograph. Rafferty's brother and Serafina on their wedding day. Young, happy, full of hope that hadn't survived the world. I want you to keep this, Serafina said quietly. Not to torture yourself, but to remember who he was, what he believed, what he'd want you to become. Rafferty held the photograph carefully. I don't deserve... You're right. You don't. Her voice was gentle but firm. But I'm giving it to you anyway. Because forgiveness isn't about deserving. It's about choosing to stop letting the past destroy the present. Are you forgiving me? I don't know yet. Ask me again in a year. She smiled slightly. Or 10 years? Or never. I haven't decided. Rafferty understood. Forgiveness wasn't a moment. It was a process, a choice made daily, sometimes hourly, and Serafina was choosing to try. That was enough. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me yet. I'm still angry, still hurt, still figuring out how to love you without betraying his memory. Take your time. I will. She leaned against him in the snow. But Rafferty, yeah? I'm glad I came back. I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad we're trying. Rafferty wrapped his arm around her shoulders, holding the photograph of his brother in his other hand, understanding that some debts could never be fully paid. But they could be honored by choosing better, by being better, by loving the people who stayed even when leaving would have been easier. Me too, he said quietly. And standing in the garden while snow fell soft over Brooklyn, Rafferty Vale finally allowed himself to believe that redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building something worth keeping from the ruins. Right. Spring returned. The roses bloomed blood red again. Serafina tended them with hands that no longer shook. Rafferty helped without trying to control. The empire stayed dead, scattered, forgotten by everyone except the people who'd survived it. And Rafferty learned to live without power. He started small, volunteering at a community center in Sunset Park, helping kids with homework, teaching them that mistakes didn't have to define them. One afternoon, a teenager asked him what he used to do. I made a lot of bad choices, Rafferty said honestly, and spent a long time thinking power was the same as strength. And now I'm trying to figure out what strength actually looks like. The kid nodded, like that made sense. And maybe it did. On a Thursday evening in May, exactly 1 year after Rafferty had found Serafina selling her wedding ring in the rain, they sat together on the garden bench watching sunset paint the sky red. Do you miss it? Serafina asked quietly. The Empire? Rafferty thought about the question carefully. Sometimes, when I hear about violence in neighborhoods I used to control, when I see people suffering because I'm not there to protect them, when I remember what it felt like to be feared. But then I come home to you, and I tend roses my mother planted, and I read my brother's letters, and I remember that power is the easiest thing in the world to have. It's love that's hard. Serafina took his hand. You're getting better at it, the love part. Am I? Yes, slowly, but yes. Rafferty looked at their joined hands, at the roses blooming around them, at the woman who'd every reason to hate him, and chose something more complicated instead. I'm going to keep trying, he said, every day, for as long as you'll let me. Good. Serafina leaned her head on his shoulder. Because I'm not going anywhere. Promise? No, But I'm here today, and probably tomorrow, and that's all either of us gets to know. Rafferty understood. The future was uncertain, fragile, built on choices neither of them had proven they could sustain. But it was theirs. And sitting in the garden while Brooklyn settled into evening around them, Rafferty Vale finally learned what his brother had known all along. That love required sacrifice, that forgiveness required time, that redemption required choosing right every single day even when wrong was easier, and that some roses, if tended carefully by hands that refused to give up, could survive even the harshest winters and bloom again, blood red, beautiful, alive. The music between them hadn't ended. It had only paused between movements. And now, finally, the next movement could begin.